I'd like to call the Prince William County School Board meeting to order. We are at 1.02, approval of the closed session agenda. Ms. Jessie?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the closed session agenda as recommended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Ms. Ralston, thank you. Discussion? Those online voting is open.
Ooh, come on, little. There we go.
Okay.
There's two not present, right? 1, 2.
The vote is 6 yes, 2 absent. Deutsch and Williams, motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Urban. You don't have your friend back there. He's struggling a little bit to get going. It's cold outside. It happens. It happens. And we're on item 2.01, the motion to enter closed session. A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jessie.
I move that pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711, the Prince William County School Board in a closed session for the following reasons. 1, to discuss the appointment and releases of specific employees under Virginia Codes 2.2-3711A, 1 and 8, and 2, to discuss and consult with legal counsel regarding a request for religious exemption pertaining to specific students under Virginia Codes 2.2-3711A, 2, and 8. 3, to discuss and take action on student disciplinary matters related to the long-term suspension appeals of specific students under Virginia Codes 2.2-3711A, 2, and 8. 4, to discuss with staff and division counsel specific legal matters related to closed audit and risk management investigation pertaining to specific employees and the divisions outside audit under Virginia Codes 2.2-3711, A1 and 8, and 5, to discuss with the staff and division counsel specific legal matters related to the specific employee and the revision of school board employment policies and regulations to comply with the 2008 Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Do I have a second?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ralston, second. Thank
I
you.
second.
Discussion? Online voting is open. Mr. Deutsch, would you like me to enter a vote for you?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
The vote is 6 yes, 2 absent. Deutsch and Williams, motion passed.
The Prince William County School Board now entered in closed session. We return at 7 o'clock. The Prince William County School Board is returning from closed session to open session. We do have a few things to vote on. We're on item 6.01, which is discussion with legal counsel regarding a proposed agreement with the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission relating to an individual discrimination complaint. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Jessie.
I move that the Prince William County School Board approve without further board action the revision of the school board employee policies and regulations to conform with the 2008 Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, specifically Policy 060, 501, 507, Regulations 503.02.1, 507-1, 511.01-1, 511.11-1, and 512-1.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Williams.
I'll make the second.
Thank you. Is there a discussion on this? Those in favor of the oh, nope. Still have it. Online voting is open.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
And on to approval of the closed session consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jessie.
I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the closed session consent agenda as recommended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Chairman,
Ms. Ralston.
I second.
Thank you. Discussion? Online voting is open. Ms. Jessie, did your vote come up? It's not showing on my screen. I don't know that I can. There it goes. Thank you, Ms. Jessie.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 abstention, Deutsch, motion passed.
Thank you. And finally, closed session certification. A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jessie.
I move that pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3712, the closed session of the Prince William County School Board meeting of January 3rd, 2018 be certified by adopting the following resolution. Now therefore it be resolved that the Prince William County School Board here certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed in closed meeting, to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only public business matters as were identified in the motion convening a closed meeting were heard and discussed or considered by the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ralston.
I second.
Thank you. Discussion? I don't know, real quick, I'm sorry. I'm getting a reverb. I don't know what the proper acoustic sound is here, but it's scratching the inside of my brainstem up here. So I don't know if whoever can handle it, the sound, it's getting me a little bit. Not like a life-threatening emergency, but it's certainly there. So I apologize. A little off subject, but it's getting me. So is there discussion on this? Online voting is open.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 abstention, Williams, motion passed.
Thank you. We'll have just a few second pause before we begin the public meeting. I'd like to call the Prince William County School Board meeting to order, the first one of 2018. It's today the 3rd, January 3rd, 2018. We will start at the request of Mr. William Deutsch of the Coles District with a moment of silence. Thank you. For our pledge today, awesome that we've got some Weeblo Cub Scouts, Troop 858 from Chris Young and Victory Elementary Schools, and you'll be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before you young men sit, I'd like each one of you to come to the microphone, give us your name, your grade, and where you go to school.
My name is Hayden Silvernail. I'm in 5th grade and I go to Trinity Christian School.
My name is Sean Yance. I am in 3rd grade and I go to Victory Elementary School.
My name is James Yance and I am 10 years old. I am in 5th grade and I go to Victory Elementary School.
My name is Noah Tipton and I am in 5th grade at Chris Young Elementary School.
My name is Jacob Ben-Savenga. I'm in 5th grade and I go to Victory Elementary School.
My name is Robert Chiletti. I'm in 5th grade and I go to Victory Elementary School.
My name is Ethan Bierman and I go to Chris Young Elementary School.
All right, being this is the first meeting of the year, we are required, for the public's knowledge, we are required to have our annual organizational meeting. So we will now go through that step, which we do at the first meeting every January. So we are on item number 11.01, which is approval of the annual organizational meeting agenda. A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Williams.
I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the annual organizational meeting agenda as recommended.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ralston.
I second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Deutsch, yes.
just one quick question. The recommended action on the motion is different in the way it's lined up in the items on board docs. Which order are we doing it in?
I'm sorry, for clarification, what are you asking?
So the list, as far as what the order is going to be, is listed one way under 11.01, but then it's different when all the items are listed out below it on board docs.
We'll go through the order as it's on board docs right now in front of us with 1102 clerk appointment, 1103 deputy clerk appointment.
Gotcha.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Online voting is open.
Vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
All right, we are on to, push my button, we are on to the appointment of the clerk. By policy, I ask the superintendent if he has a recommendation for the clerk of the board. Dr. Waltz?
That the Prince William County School Board appoint Deborah H. Urban as clerk of the Prince William County School Board for 2018. The salary for the clerk shall be as currently budgeted.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Recommending Deborah H. Urban, I will make the motion that the Prince William County School Board appoint Deborah H. Urban as clerk of the Prince William County School Board for 2018. The salary for the clerk shall be as currently budgeted. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Williams.
I'd like to second.
Thank you. Discussion. Online voting is open. Hey, look at that.
Debbie's camera.
Miss Jessie, it still says I'm waiting on your vote.
It still says?
Yeah. I just like to pick on you, Miss Jessie. I promise that's the only reason I'm doing this. I got it now. Debbie, if you would do the honors and hire yourself.
Wow, was nervous there. The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Yay. And then we have the 1103, a motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams.
I move that the Prince William County School Board appoint B. Simpson as Deputy Clerk of the Prince William County School Board for 2018. The salary for the Deputy Clerk shall be currently budgeted.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I second.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. I appreciate you beating me to it.
Sure.
Any debate, any conversation? I'll just say that Ms. Simpson currently isn't with us today. She normally is sitting beside Ms. Urban, so we can't put the camera on her. So, but the online voting is now open. Ms. Jessie, that means you too.
All right. I'm clicking.
Still says I'm waiting on yours, Ms. Jessie.
I'm clicking.
I know you are. I can see your. There it is.
Okay, try it again.
We're obviously having a technical problem with Miss Jessie's computer. We may need to take a brief pause to get this situated. Yeah, Miss Jessie, would you like to? Yeah, you need to have your microphone on. Miss Jessie, I can enter it in for you manually. How do you vote?
Yay.
Yeah, with your microphone, please. Miss
Yay.
Jessie, how do you vote? Yay. Thank you.
Vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
Miss Jessie, before I have another motion, maybe you just want to refresh again. Maybe that will help just with the F5. I don't know that it will, but I thought I'd give it a shot. My only other thing that I know is to turn it off and turn it back on.
Well,
So,
with the other votes, try it again.
okay. We're on item 11.04, corporate surety bond for the clerk and deputy clerk. A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman?
Miss Williams.
I move that the Prince William County School Board require a corporate surety bond in the amount of $10,000 for the clerk and deputy clerk to the school board, conditioned upon the faithful performance and discharge of their duties, with the premium for such bonds to be paid for by the school board.
Thank you, Miss Williams. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Miss Ralston.
I second.
Thank you. Discussion? Online voting is open. Came through that time, Miss Jessie.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
On to 11:05, times, dates, and locations of school board meetings for 2018. A motion, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Miss Williams.
I move that the Prince William County School Board establish the location of its regular school meetings at 14715 Bristow Road, Manassas, Virginia, on the first and third Wednesdays of the months, January through June and September through December. Closed session meetings shall convene at 6 p.m. and public meetings shall convene at 7 p.m. A few adjustments will be made to accommodate spring break, graduation, the Virginia School Board Association's annual convention, and winter break.
Thank you, Miss Williams. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Miss Ralston.
I second.
Thank you. Discussion. Online voting is open.
Vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
And the superintendent, we're on 11.06, the superintendent's designee to attend school board meetings. Dr. Waltz, who would you like to appoint as your designee?
That Keith Emon, Deputy Superintendent, be appointed as the designee of the division superintendent to attend meetings of the school board in the absence or inability of the superintendent to attend.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. I will then make that motion that Keith Emon, Deputy Superintendent, be appointed as the designee of the division superintendent to attend meetings of the school board in the absence or inability of the superintendent to attend. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams.
Second.
Thank you. Is there discussion? Online voting is open. I've seen no one with me here.
I don't have anything.
Nothing?
Nope.
It says it's waiting on everybody. Hold on. I'm not sure how to undo it. Let me try it one more time. Let me close. I'm going to reopen it. Did everyone not pop up, I assume, besides mine? Okay, let me try it again. I'm going to open online voting. Did it come up that time? Thank you. It's a completely flawless system, there's no doubt.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
We're on to the motion of membership in professional organizations and appointment of representatives. I'll make this motion. That the Prince William County School Board, this is a long one, I apologize, that the Prince William County, we only do it once a year, that the Prince William County School Board approve the appointments for the organization's committees as follows. 1, continue membership in the Virginia School Boards Association and renew membership for National School Boards Association for 2018. Elect Ms. Williams to serve as delegate to the Virginia School Board Association Annual Convention in Williamsburg, Virginia on November 14 through 16, 2018. Elect Ms. Ralston to serve as alternate to the Virginia School Boards Association Annual Convention in Williamsburg, Virginia on November 14 through 16, 2018. 4, elect Mr. Deutsch to serve as delegate to the National School Boards Association Annual Convention in San Antonio, Texas on April 7th through 9th, 2018. Elect Ms. Ralston to serve as alternate to the National School Boards Association Convention in San Antonio, Texas on April 7th through 9th, 2018. 6th, appoint Mr. Wilk to serve as representative to the Northern Virginia Special Education Regional Board for 2018. 7, appoint Mr. Trenum to serve as alternate to the Northern Virginia Special Education Regional Board for 2018. Appoint Ms. Jessie to serve as representative to the National Alliance of Black School Educators for 2018. Appoint Ms. Ralston to serve as alternate to the National Alliance of Black School Educators for 2018. Appoint Chairman Sawyers to serve as representative to the Prince William County and Schools Joint Audit Committee for 2018. Appoint Mr. Wilk to serve as alternate to the Prince William County and Schools Joint Audit Committee for 2018. Appoint Mr. Trenum to serve as representative to the Washington Area Boards of Education for 2018. Appoint Ms. Satterwhite to serve as alternate to the Washington Area Boards of Education for 2018. Appoint Ms. Jessie to serve as representative to the Head Start Advisory Board for 2018. 15, appoint Ms. Ralston to serve as representative to the School Health Advisory Board for 2018. 16, appoint Ms. Satterwhite and Mr. Wilk to serve on the Safe Schools Advisory Council for 2018. 17, appoint Chairman Sawyers and Ms. Williams to serve as representatives to the Prince William County Schools Internal Audit Committee for 2018. I need a 5-minute break, everyone. And 18, appoint Mr. Wilk to serve as alternate to the Prince William County Schools Internal Audit Committee for 2018. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams.
A second?
Thank you. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Trenum.
I would like to offer up a minor amendment to the list, and I'll explain. I'll tell you what that amendment is, and then I'll explain it right quick.
Okay.
On item number 1, I would amend it to where it just says continue membership in the Virginia School Boards Association for 2018, basically striking membership in the National School Boards Association. And the reason why is basically we don't pay the dues. We haven't paid the dues for years. We can still go to the convention, so we can do all that. It keeps it clean as far as since we don't pay the dues, we just don't officially enroll in that.
What's that? Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to put that in writing so I can get that amendment exactly right. The board will stand at ease. Mr. Trenum, on a side note, I don't think you should have to sign these. The coffee stain is actually your signature enough on anything that comes from your end of the table. So I think that should be your calling card. Let me add a motion here.
Wanted to personalize it very special.
I appreciate that. I love that it puts this in here. Strike. It's a strike.
It's a substitute. It's a substitute motion.
Are you, Mr. Tenenbaum, are you just suggesting that we strike the renew membership?
Yes, he is. Yes.
Okay. Nope.
So I think he's striking and renew membership.
You're right. I agree. Let me turn my. Mr. Chairman, it's a little different than what you wrote down, so I want to make sure I got it right. Since we're doing to strike, instead of only leaving that, it's actually a motion to strike. So I have the motion is to strike and renew membership. Sorry, let me just correct. Motion to strike and the following words and renew membership for National School Boards Association (NSBA).
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, it took me a while to get there, but I got there.
All right. That's
All right. Mr. Trenum made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Deutsch seconds. Discussion.
Sure, Mr. Chairman.
It's Mr. Trenum's motion.
Okay, thanks. Once again, I forget how many thousands of dollars the dues are, but essentially, we can still, as a member of VSBA, we still have the right to go down and attend the NSB convention, and we haven't been paying those dues for years now. So just to keep it clean, it's like if we're not going to pay the dues, we shouldn't be saying we're going to renew the membership. That was my thought, and I apologize for not bringing it sooner earlier. I was looking at it today, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. I just happened to see it, so that's why I brought it up. So.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
This makes me concerned because the rest of the list here, we appoint a delegate to attend the convention, and I'm not sure you can be a voting delegate member if you're not financial. Most organizations don't permit that, so this, I think, should be looked into further before we make a decision on whether or not we can send someone as a delegate if we may not be able to vote at the convention legally without being financial. So does anyone have an answer to that, maybe off the top of their head?
Ms. Satterwhite?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe not an exact answer, but we haven't paid the dues since before I got on the board. I didn't come on the board until January 2012. And we've had delegates to the National School Board Association all of these years since I've been on the board. So I don't know if it's allowed or not, but we've had delegates and they've gotten badges, so. And also, in addition to that, the dues for NSBA, I don't have an exact figure, but it's approximately $15,000 on top of what we also pay to VSBA. So it's also a financial consideration. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Williams?
I still think we should check. I mean, if we're changing the renewing part, then we should check the voting delegate part as well. I don't think you can do one without the other, and it's kind of odd that this never came up before as well. So, like I said, I just think for our own due diligence that we get it correct. We may be allowed to attend the convention as members of VSBA, but that does not necessarily permit us to vote.
The concern that I have is if we don't, first, I guess I don't understand what the harm is. If we haven't paid since before you were on the board, I don't necessarily see what the harm is in leaving it just as is. My concern would be a bit of what I don't want to put words in Ms. Williams' mouth, but kind of the unintended consequences of this. Yes, we're electing an alternate and a delegate and an alternate kind of at the same time in one motion. I get that. Does that then prohibit, because the board does not then authorize other members to attend? Does that mean, because traditionally the entire board travels together to these things, whether it be the VSBA in Williamsburg or the NSBA, last year I think it was Denver, or this year it's San Antonio. Does that then not allow, because board action didn't explicitly approve membership and therefore didn't elect 6 of the 8 of us, those who weren't elected to the delegate or alternate position, does that then prohibit them from attending as well, require additional board action? So that's a concern, kind of the law of unintended consequences here of doing this. So that's just my concern. Anyone else? Ms. Jessie?
I guess my question, in the past, those persons who were appointed, were you given voting privileges? Because obviously we had not paid, but last year, were you allowed to vote?
Ms. Williams?
Unfortunately, Ms. Jessie, due to a medical emergency last year in Denver, we were not represented at the delegation during the voting portion, unless I was not an alternate. I don't know if Mr. Deutsch attended, but if he was selected as an alternate, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think there's a little confusion there. Yeah.
Well, you feel free to clarify if you go.
That's what I was asking. If you,
No, I think she's asking,
I was asking,
did
I
you
don't
vote?
remember if you were
Who was the
appointed.
alternate last year, I think, and then did they vote?
I didn't attend the convention.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but a whole bunch of
Deutsch?
us board members going to the conference is different than voting membership at the convention. This wouldn't impact, 6, 8, whatever number of people being able to attend the convention.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion? Online voting is open. Okay.
The vote is 5 yes, 2 no. Sawyers and Williams, 1 abstention. Mrs. Jessie, motion passed.
Thank you. For further discussion, I would like to, we're back to the main motion now, just for clarification, everybody on the board, we're back to the main motion. When it comes to the appointments, actually, this one, I hate to use the word easier, but this one seemed to be, as far as the different boards, committees, councils, whatever, not boards, wrong choice of words, committees, councils that we use, I believe I was able to get everybody their first choice. That wasn't, I know the vice chairman's listed on there at the same time as well. So that's taking that position out because it's a separate agenda item. I believe I was able to get everybody their first choice for what they listed as the committees, which is not the easiest thing to do in some years because people choose the same committees. So I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I do want to thank the other 7 members of the board for filling out the form and not all choosing the same thing this time. And so I am the one responsible for appointing all of these and going through it. Thank you, Ms. Urban, who we've just now hired again, for helping me make sense of all of it and collecting all of it. But I think it's important that we obviously, that I want to explain what the process was, is that basically the board reports back through the clerk the ones that they're interested in and the ones that they would like to do. And so we try to do it as accurately as possible. No one ever chooses the delegate or the backup alternate seat, so I kind of have to plug them in as best I can. But that's how we got there. I'm not here to make any changes to this. Obviously, it's my motion, but I just wanted to let everyone know how we got there. Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Ms. Williams, okay? Hold on.
Okay, I did write it out.
Okay.
I would like to move that we remove the delegate representation due to NSBA due to the status of our membership.
Okay, did you write that down?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Give me 1 second, please. The board will stand at ease.
The status of our membership, I mean, if we can still attend as board members because of our membership with VSBA, then I think we should really research whether or not we can legally send voting members to the delegation body, which is what the appointment is for, since we're not financial members.
Ms. Williams, I want to make sure I have it before I ask for a second. Yours is actually a motion to strike, and you're making a motion to strike items 4 and 5. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the motion is, sorry, I need a second for this motion? Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ralston?
I second.
Thank you. The motion is, it's a motion to strike items 4 and 5 from the main motion. And now we have discussion. Ms. Williams, it is your motion.
Just a brief explanation. As I stated before, I don't feel that we should appoint people to be delegates to the National School Board Association if we're not financial members until we can further investigate whether or not we have the legal authority to do so.
Ms. Williams, and let me ask you a point of information. Did I hear you say earlier that you think we can still attend the convention, but you're not saying not to attend the convention?
Absolutely.
You're saying that we just wouldn't appoint a delegate and an alternate simply because we now, well, assuming the main motion passes, that we would not have membership in the NSBA?
Absolutely. It's nothing to do with attendance, just the voting during the legal session of the convention.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 things, I think, as has been brought up before. We haven't been paying dues, and we've still had voting delegates. The amendment before was simply to bring the language in agreement with what our financial position has been. So I don't think that there's any necessity to it. Looking at this list, I do find it a little interesting. There's a disparity in the number of appointments different people have.
We need to keep it to the motion on right now.
I am getting to it. And so I was the only one with 1 appointment, and so that would be an interesting way to kick me off of anything.
Ms. Williams.
Yes, let me be perfectly clear. This is not personal. I'm also a member of several organizations that use Robert's Rules of Order and have legal voting bodies, and you are not allowed to vote if you are not financial in any of those organizations, which is why I was asking for further clarification. As a non-financial member, you are able to attend any session and any meeting, but you are not legally permitted to vote. And so before we continue down a path that we were not clear on earlier, and we are making corrections, I feel that this is the right move to make until we have actual clarification on whether or not we are legally allowed to vote at the National School Boards Association. It has nothing to do with the people that are elected or are being appointed to it. I myself was appointed in the past and did not realize it, or else I would have said the same thing.
I would just like to add, it makes sense to me from the perspective of, it doesn't make sense to appoint delegates and alternates to something that we're officially not joining. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense from that perspective. And so, I mean, it makes sense. It just seems like it's cleaning up the original motion to strike as well. That's all. Anyone else? All right, the motion to strike items 4 and 5, motion made by Ms. Williams, seconded by Ms. Ralston. Online voting is open. Just to be clear, voting yes means you're agreeing to strike items 4 and 5.
The vote is 4 yes, Sawyers, Ralston, Trenum, and Williams. 2 no, Deutsch and Satterwhite. 2 abstentions, Jesse and Wilk. Motion passed. No, would it be? I'm sorry, motion fails.
I don't know why it says motion fails. The motion does pass. It's a simple majority for this. I'm not sure why Board Docs is saying motion fails. Just to be clear, the motion does pass. This is a simple majority.
Oh, I was right the first time.
Yeah, you're right the first time. It's just a simple majority for this. Okay, we are, everyone, we are back to the main motion. I'm going to click on it here to see if we're back to the main motion. Both of the motions to strike have passed, and so we are on the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Nope. Mr. Deutsch?
Yeah, speaking of the main motion, so I'm just going to raise the point I raised earlier. I think I offered about 7 different possibilities of things I was interested in. Some people were pointing as many as 4. I somehow just got 1, and now I'm struck from it. Find it very curious.
Thank you. With that, I'll call the vote. Online voting is open. That's fine. Mr. Welk, it's the only one that's not coming through is yours. How do you vote? Yeah. Microphone, please.
Yay.
Thank you, Mr. Welk.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 no. Motion passed.
All right. We are on to nomination for the vice chair. This has been maybe the most the community doesn't know this, but this has been a topic of discussion amongst the board in process. I would actually like to make an incidental motion before this, as suggested, that the possibility by the parliamentarian. Just give me 1 second to write that up. I've been trying. I've been. I'm going to blame it on Miss Williams.
It's okay. I was on the phone with tech support. They told me to try this.
All right, we'll make the motion. Hopefully it gets a second, then I'll be glad to explain it. That a vote be taken after each nomination, and if the nominee is not elected, that the nominations be reopened and a vote be taken on the next nominee. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Williams, thank you. The main purpose of this, I know that may sound funny, but we've recently learned through parliamentary advice and some different things that we may not have been doing the vice chairman thing exactly as written for, I don't know, 30 years. And so the intent and the goal of this motion is to say that we're going to do it exactly as we've done it before, which is we make one nomination, we can get seconded, hopefully, ideally get seconded. We have a discussion, we take a vote. If that motion doesn't pass, then we have a next nomination for a vice chair, which is traditionally how it's been done before. So it may sound funny, but that is the intent, to make sure that it's been done. We do it the same way that we've done for 25 years or more. So that is it. Again, the motion is that a vote be taken after each nomination, and if the nominee is not elected, that the nominations be reopened and a vote taken on the next nominee. Any further discussion?
It's not debatable.
And I'm sorry, this is not debatable. I apologize. I was just reminded.
All right, point of information for the parliamentarian. I thought that we were going to open the floor to all nominations and then vote on one nominee at a time. Are we saying now we're taking one nomination and a vote and a new nomination and a vote?
Mr. Balch?
The answer is that the default rule under Robert's Rules of Order is indeed, as Mr. Deutsch has described it. However, it is within the power of the board, should it choose to do so, through an incidental motion relating to voting, to change the method of voting. So the proposal is to change the method of voting in the way that has been described. If it were to be defeated, then one would go back to the process, the so-called viva voce process that has been described.
Right. And the point of this, for your point of information, the point of this motion is to do it as we've always done it for decades. Online voting.
Wait, point of information. So what you're saying is that if we were to vote down this motion, then we would be going by the process that the parliamentarian outlined for us, correct?
That is correct. And voting yes for the motion would be doing it the way that we've done it for 20 plus years. Correct. Online voting is open.
So why did we?
Well, there's no debate on
parliamentarian if
this.
we're not going to use his-
We're not allowed to. It seems like we're getting into debate. I think we've made this abundantly clear. Online voting is open. Mr. Wilk, it's still saying I'm not getting yours as well, just so you know. It says I'm waiting on Ms. Ralston and Mr. Wilk. I got Ms. Ralston's, and I got Mr. Wilk.
The vote is 5 yes. Sawyers, Jesse, Ralston, Wilk, and Williams. 3 no. Deutsch, Satterwhite, and Trenum. Motion passes.
I will now make a motion that the Prince William County School Board elect Lily Jesse as vice chairman for 2018.
Mr. Chairman, I second.
Ms. Williams, thank you for your second. I love it. Working ahead. We're now to the debatable part, and which not a whole lot of debate for me since this is my motion. I've obviously gotten to know Ms. Jessie over the last 2 years, and a little bit in 2015. I think I do thoroughly enjoy working with her and would be honored to do so again. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams.
I agree. I believe Ms. Jessie did a fantastic job over the course of the last year when you weren't able to fulfill your duties as chairman. I know that in the past, we had done it according to seniority, and I gave up my vote for Ms. Jessie, and I'm glad that I did. I think that she's been a wonderful vice chair, and I hope that we continue to elect her as a representative when you aren't able to do your duties.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Anyone else? I'm sorry, who was that? Oh, sorry, Mr. Trenum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Ms. Williams said, in the past, we have rotated that around, and I thought that was always a good practice. It helped, shared the workload. It also helped give other board members an opportunity to see how some of the processes work, and it was an educational piece from that perspective. So based on that, I'm going to be voting no. Ms. Jessie has done a very good job in the last couple of years. So there certainly isn't any seen as any. I don't want this to be seen as any sort of discontent with her performance. I think, like I said, I think she's done a very good job. I did it a couple of times in the past, and it was very educational for me. So, like I said, I think it's good to share that experience among the different board members. So I will be voting no.
Thank you, Mr. Trenum. Anyone else? Mr. Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also agree. I think it's important to rotate the position. I think it was, I was looking forward to the proposal that the parliamentarian offered about how we should do nominations, to where we would actually be opening up the vice chair vote to a vote by the whole board and could put forward nominations, have a discussion, and
Mr. Deutsch, we have to keep it in pertaining to the motion on the floor, which is that Prince William County School Board elect Lola Jessie as vice chairman. The motion you're speaking to has been passed as an amendment, so we have to keep it as far as as voting for or against Ms. Jessie.
I'm getting there. And so I think there is a prudence in letting this be a decision of the board and opening this up to the whole board. So I would like to offer a substitute motion. Substitute motion is to elect Diane Ralston as vice chairman for 2018.
I'll second that.
Yet. Hold on one second. Mr. Deutsch, please put it in writing, pass it down.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on one second. We have to get a motion in first, and then we'll be able to go there. Hold on one second. Ms. Ralston, do you have a point of order? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Ralston, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Point of order, Ms. Ralston.
Thank you. Mr. Deutsch, I thank you very, very much. But this time, I'm going to pass.
Thank you. Correct, thank you. Mr. Deutsch, I am going to rule this out of order because the motion that was already passed said that should this one not pass, then we would put forth another person to fulfill this role. So we certainly will have that opportunity if if the motion for Ms. Jessie does not pass, and so the motion is ruled out of order. Is there any further discussion? Online voting is open. It's not working. Let me try it one more time. Wires are cold. I tried it again. Did it come up this time?
The vote is 5 yes. Sawyers, Jessie, Ralston, Wilk, and Williams. 3 no. Deutsch, Satterwhite, and Trenum. Motion passes.
Everyone, please welcome, please join me in congratulating Miss Jessie in the vice chairmanship. Miss Jessie, as is policy, you now have the floor for being elected as vice chair.
I've had the opportunity to serve the school system since the early 70s. I don't want to give my age away, but it's been a long time. And I honestly, I've had a great time. I've been blessed to have the position. I am honored to serve this community. I'm honored to serve the students in this community. And I'm honored to work with every member of this board. I did not take it personally that you had your rationale for not selecting me as chair, but I will work with every single member of this board. I think it's important. Someone asked me, I think it was a newspaper, who said, well, what happened when the chair was not there? Did everything go smoothly? And I told them that the job of the vice chair is to stand in for the chair when necessary. I've stood in at events. I'm available during the day to do that. If the superintendent asked me to speak on behalf of the chair asked me to speak on his behalf, I'm willing to do that. For me, and it will always be, that it is absolutely about student learning. That's why I came on this board, and that's why I remain on it. It has never been for me about a position or being vice chair, but I am honored to serve, and I want to thank everyone who voted for me, and those persons who did not vote for me. As I said, I will work with all of you. I will be diligent in my efforts to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Jessie. And now we're on to normal board kind of procedures. We are on approval of the public meeting agenda. A motion is in order. Ms. Williams?
Mr. Chairman? Sorry, I was not.
I apologize.
on
I
the
thought you had
right
your hand up.
number.
That's my
No,
fault.
what number?
1201. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
I thought you had your hand
didn't
up.
move my,
I'm sorry.
It's just habit because I've been over here doing motions all night. I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting agenda as recommended.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ralston?
I second.
Thank you. Discussion? Those in favor of the motion? I'm sorry, wrong. Online voting is open.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 no. Deutsch. Motion passed.
Thank you. Now motion we are on to the adoption of the consent agenda. Ms. Williams?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting consent agenda as recommended.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Chairman,
Ms. Ralston?
I second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Deutsch?
I request we remove item 13.02 from the consent agenda.
Ms. Urban, can you move item 13.02 from the consent agenda, please? It's any board member's right to remove item 13.0, or not to remove 13.02. It's any, just so the public knows, it's any board member's right to remove something from the consent agenda.
You want me to move it down to board matters, sir?
Yeah, we can move it to board matters, but we will handle it as is tradition when someone is pulled off consent. We'll handle it right after the consent agenda item is voted on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Jessie?
items 1309.
Okay, let's just wait 1 second until we
Okay.
can get this updated and then hit F. We'll have to refresh and then we can go from there. Mr. Manis, just as a heads up, that's your, I think 1302 is a warning. Now's not the time to sneak out, just so you know.
Okay, if everyone would refresh.
Back to the motion. It was Ms. Williams made the motion, Ms. Ralston seconded the motion, and now Ms. Jessie, you are recognized for debate on the consent agenda. Ms. Jessie, microphone, please.
Actually, I just wanted to talk about, just make a discussion, just add some comments on items 1308, 1309, and 1310. Okay. 1308, it's the National African American History Month, but that's not really what I want to discuss. It's related to National Black History Month. I just wanted to announce that the Prince William County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority will have the Youth Oratorical Contest on the 15th of January. It is well attended. I invite every board member here to attend, the superintendent and his staff. Your continued participation in this means so much. And I would also like to add that one of the oratorical winners, Seth Apuku Yaboa, spoke for his senior class at William and Mary, was elected to speak, and is now the aide to the new governor of Virginia. And on career education and technical education month, this is an area that I really would like for us to really spend some time more than just recognizing it as a month, but it's just critical that we start to look at the fact that some of our students may not be college bound, but I would like to see every student leave this county either career bound or college bound. National Counseling Week. I attended a meeting at Bevel, and there was so much talk about counseling and social workers and the need that our students have. You know, we've had many suicide situations, but I just want to give my gratitude to counselors, and I do think it's something that we need to look at, our social workers, and those particular areas I think we need to look at as we approach the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Ms. Williams?
Yes, I'd just like to sort of piggyback on a few of the same things. 1308 for National African American History Month. I would encourage people to go out and learn a little bit about the theme this year, since it's African Americans in times of war, considering we had plenty of debate this year on our flag and anthems and things of that nature. I think that that's a very interesting topic for the national theme, and I'm not sure that everyone is quite up to speed on African Americans in times of war, so you may learn a little bit there. I also would like to touch on 1309. I think that in this county we do a fantastic job of offering a large variety of options to students who are not college bound, and I applaud our division and especially the superintendent and Mr. Wright for their continued investigation into more program offerings and the dedication from the superintendent and his staff to ensuring that we continue to grow in this field. I think it's quite amazing that every high school in the county offers something for a student that is not college bound, and that's something to be proud of. We always could do more, but I think right now, as I say often publicly, you definitely get the most bang for your buck in Prince William County with your options, and we should take a moment and applaud ourselves for that. And then 1310, most people know I've been pretty hard on school counselors. I would like to say to the superintendent, I've noticed that we have an uptick in hiring of male counselors. I know it's also who applies, but I would just like to say that I think that that's wonderful. I've seen in the past year the diversity of our counselors that we've brought on. And as a mother of a student, high school male student, I deeply appreciate the fact that there are counselors who look like him, that he feels comfortable in talking to, and I think that that's a major issue for a lot of our students. And I would once again like to applaud our superintendent and staff for adding the diversity that was much needed in our counseling staff and bringing our counselors up to speed. I just think that that's a wonderful thing, and I hope that we continue down that path. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Wilk.
1309, I do want to commend and thank administration. Career and college pathways obviously is what I do outside of the school board, working with school districts and consulting and stuff like that. And I want to commend our own school division, Dr. Waltz, Mr. Wright, Mr. Mulgrew, for exploring opportunities. We have some great programs, as we're already recognized, whether it's the welding or the culinary program at Potomac, the cabinetry, HVAC, the cosmetology. We have a lot of great programs, and I think there's a major effort to expand. One notable one Mr. Mulgrew did explore about electrical apprenticeship program, cybersecurity, aviation, a lot of great things. So I do think we're heading in the right direction. Because as we saw at our legislative agenda, there's a major focus, especially with our partnerships in the local community colleges, about filling jobs that don't require necessarily a 4-year degree. Also want to go and thank our counselors for the National School Counseling Week. I work closely with ASCA, which is the National Organization for the School Counselors. And one of the major areas is social and emotional learning, which I think the components and what we're going to see as a division with the rollout of the profile of a Virginia graduate going into next year will be very beneficial for the students, not just in college career, but also social and emotional learning. And as we continue to expand that, I think looking at potentially adding some more positions and staffing in this area would be a desirable, again, of course, with the budgetary constraints, but something to look into. But again, I want to thank and commend the division in both those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. Anyone else? Ms. Ralston?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a couple of things regarding Black History Month. I'm Black 365 days a year, so please talk to me more than just 1 month. That whole notion just does not work for me. It doesn't. I'm your friend 365 days. It's not a special day. Nothing happens special. So I thank you for just listening to that.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. Anyone else? I'll just be very brief. I will reiterate what Ms. Jessie said about the oratorical contest. January 15th this year, is that correct? Yes. Hilton Memorial Chapel. It's amazing. It's can't miss. You absolutely have to be there. If you haven't been there, I'm telling you. When I went for the first time, I was sitting there going, I can't believe I didn't bring my kids, and I made sure I did the second time so they could sit there. Mine are now in 7th grade and 4th grade, and I made sure that they didn't miss it because it's inspiring and it's everything all at once and every positive emotion you can feel. And I did just want to briefly touch from a different side of things than what Ms. Williams did with the National School Counseling Week. Obviously, I'm very much in favor of recognizing National School Counseling Week, and I hope and I have faith in the board. I know that we've begun this and we've started to attack this problem, but reducing the workloads for our school counselors as we head into budget season, as the new year has rolled around, I think it's vitally important that I realize that we cannot. I'm not shooting for the moon here. I realize we can't fix everything all at once. That's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm saying that we continue our pledge to ourselves and to our school counselors to give them reasonable workloads so they can make the types of impacts that you're saying on students and be able to spend that time with them. I think it's important, and I do hope that the school board continues to go down that road. All right, anything else? Online voting is open.
Vote is 8 yes, unanimous, motion passed.
As is standard procedure, when an item is pulled off of consent agenda, we typically just go to it immediately. Mr. Manis, I'm going to ask you to take your place because I'm sure there will be some questions. But what I'll do is I'll start with the motion that the Prince William County School Board approve the 2018 annual audit plan and direct internal staff and management to work cooperatively and in partnership to fulfill the 2018 annual audit internal plan. Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Williams. I'll just give a brief beef. I barbecue too much. I'll give a brief background on this. That the internal audit plan, which ultimately comes from the Internal Audit Committee, which we passed a month or so ago. The voting members of that committee consist of then was me, Mr. Trenum, and Mr. Klein. We were the voting members, and there was a unanimous vote to pass the internal audit plan that's listed here on board docs moving forward. Again, the unanimous vote is 3-0 because there's 3 voting members. And so that's how we came out of internal audit, and that's where we stand today. Any other debate? Mr. Deutsch.
Thank you. I guess question for Mr. Manis, can you just walk us through what it is that we're going to be looking at and just talk us through this agenda item?
Yes, thank you. Our annual internal audit plan, what we try to do is it is a risk-based plan where we look at kind of the higher risk items throughout the school system. So given the approximate 96 schools that we have, every school is on an approximate 4-year cycle. So with that in mind, we try to do about 35 school audits a year, and in addition to that, some other centralized audits. So I get input from all the associate superintendents, the superintendent, deputy superintendent, audit committee members, directors of finance for areas that they would like to be considered as part of the audit plan. Based on that goes before the internal audit committee. We have discussions surrounding it, and that gets approved, and then it gets sent forward to the full board, which is where it's at now for the full approval.
So the first part of the language here is referring to the different schools around the division that we're going to look at, correct?
I'm sorry.
So the first part of the language here is referring to the different schools around the division that we're going to look at and do kind of a comprehensive school audit of?
Yes.
And then walk me through, what are the next 2 items looking at?
The next 2 items are dealing with, I'm assuming you're talking about the high school facility usage.
Yeah, they're the 2 numbered items.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a suggestion from the internal audit committee members that we add this to the audit plan, and we've actually done some work in this over the prior years, where it is looking at the facility usage for our various facilities. If an organization from the outside of the school wishes to rent a school facility, they may do so. There is a typical rental fee charge for that. So there's a process for that to take place. And so this will be looking at the internal controls surrounding that whole process and whether we're billing correctly, what are the costs to the school system, do we have good internal controls, both automated and also financial controls. I was in favor of doing this review, although it was not my original recommendation, but I'm perfectly fine doing that. It's an area that I think we all know that there may be some room for improvements, and it would be following up on prior audit work that we've already done in this area.
And what about the second item?
Second item would be a system security follow-up audit. We did this audit back a couple years ago, and so this would be following up on that. We did a gap analysis basically a few years ago for kind of where we're at with our system securities as far as online usage. Do we have good controls in place for that? There are standards that we measured it against, and we basically just did a gap analysis. And so we came up with items where that the IT group is working on implementing those items to increase those controls. So this is to just follow up on that to see where they're at with that assessment process and to see how much progress that they've made during the interim time period.
And then, so who all is conducting the audit?
That would just be me.
Okay. And so, I guess, what's your process for conducting an audit?
Just in general,
Yeah.
like a school audit or this specific
Either one of the
audit?
two.
Okay, so as far as the process goes, so we first put out, after the approval of the audit plan, which is what this process is. So then it gets scheduled. My audit plan is on a calendar year, so it then becomes scheduled. Prior to the audit being conducted, usually a month ahead of time, we send out the announcement memorandum letting the area management group know that it's being scheduled. We then conduct a entrance meeting where we go over the scope of the audit, what's going to be looked at, how they can prepare for it, how they can get ready for it, answer any questions that they may have, any type of concerns that they may have, if there's additional areas that they would like to focus on during the course of that review. Then we do the audit. We identify any type of control weaknesses, gaps, issues that would be noteworthy. We discuss those, vet those with the area management folks. It then goes to a draft report process. They are then required to issue action plans for how they're going to address those items. That gets approved by the associate superintendent of that area. Then it goes before the deputy superintendent, and then a final report is issued.
And so who all is involved in actually compiling the report outside of yourself? Like, as far as figuring out recommendations or maybe what we should look into in regards to different things that are being audited?
So I work with the individual local area, and I make recommendation, and then if there's any feedback, we have like a discussion regarding that. So we come to a consensus on that. If there is a disagreement, then we step it up to the associate superintendent level. If we still can't get agreement, then we step it up further to the deputy superintendent level.
All right. And is there any process for whether senior staff members or board members to maybe offer input into how the audit should go?
Or how the audit should be
conducted, or maybe things may look into further, like as the audit process is ongoing?
Sure, that would be part of the annual audit plan process. If there's a particular area of focus or that you would want to narrow it in on, that's I usually get the input from the audit committee. But then when it goes before the full board, then you have opportunity to.
But as a particular audit is going on, you've got independence?
Sorry?
But as a particular audit is going on, you have independence? Like, once we determine, this should be audited, then you have independence?
Yes, sir. I've never been restricted for what I look at or in the manner that I would conduct an audit. I feel full independence with that.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. Anyone else? Ms. Williams and then Mr. Trenum.
For the audit for the facility usage, I'm assuming you're looking at indoor and outdoor facility, the facility in its entirety, basically.
Yes. For example, an outside organization may want to rent the school gym, or they may want to rent the baseball field. It would be indoor, outdoors, both.
And so when you, just because I'm not familiar, will you be looking at things like HVAC charges, electrical charges, how we determine what's billed, all of that goes into the billing for a group that's coming to rent our facility?
So we have a standard rate that is determined by Prince William County School Administration. So those rates are fixed and they're also published. So we want to make sure that they're being charged the correct rate. There's a rate for profit groups and there's a rate for nonprofit groups. And there's a process that the organization goes through to make application, then to request that scheduling, and then for approval by risk management by the local area school. Just certain things that they have to do if they're tax exempt, non-exempt, certain requirements that they have to go through. They're supposed to be billed in advance. They're supposed to pay in advance. If they're not, then there's a collection process. We've had some issues surrounding that in the past. We have oversight from risk management department for how well that process is going. So we're going to be looking at that whole process to see how the controls are, working. If there are control gaps, or if there's a possibility for some folks for using facilities without being charged, and if so, what would be the correct way to prevent that from happening?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Trenum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I wanted to touch on and maybe suggest we both do this is because this one is a little different in that normally Mr. Manis just brought forward his plan. We talked about it and we'd pretty much go with what that. And this particular year, there was actually a couple things added that Mr. Manis didn't bring to us at our recommendation. So I wanted to talk to the one that I brought forward. And that was the one for the information systems audit. We had done, like Mr. Manis briefed, we had done a gap analysis a few years back. This is a follow-up on that. But one of the things with information systems and information system security is they can be a large element of risk for an organization, especially an organization as large as we are, a government organization with student data and stuff like that. So the reason why I brought this forward is I thought it would be what's the word I'm looking for? Prudent for us to look at an outside audit firm to come do this because simply because, well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a specialized area of expertise to do a really good job, thorough job. That we've got IT staff, but they're busy running the systems as opposed to just having time to actually go and do an external audit. And Mr. Manis has. In a 140-hour work week, you can only just hit the tops of the waves there. So, like I said, for that additional expertise and also just for the additional workload. And like I said, for any government organization, it's an element of risk. I know back when I was in that field professionally, it was some years back, but school divisions were often targets of activity and things like that. So. I just thought it would be prudent for us to bring in some outside eyes to look at the systems from that perspective. I think some of the concerns that I've heard, I'll say some concerns on that, or some questions maybe that I would have on the high school facility field usage. 120 hours, that's basically 3 work weeks. We have 12 high schools, so the simple math says if you're going to hit them all, that's basically 10 hours per high school to do the audit and write up the reports. Was that going to be your approach, or was it going to be a sampling of several? So I would have that question of you, Mr. Manis, as far as what your approach is going to be on that. And then, Mr. Chairman, just like I said, I explained my reasoning for bringing forth my item. It might be helpful for you to bring this. So, okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, so my approach was going to be to look at the process as a whole first, from the central office standpoint, then how it's filtered out to the various schools. Obviously, I will look at the individual schools. I also look at this when I go to every school in those 35 audits. This is a portion of that I look at. So I already have some kind of feel before I actually get into this as to what's out there. But I'll be able to focus a little more closely on just this one specific topic and then make recommendations. We have some known risks that we think we can strengthen some, but we want to look at it a little closer to make, before we make judgment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Trenum, and I'll take this opportunity to explain too. And I think it's good to know that Mr. Trenum pointed out that that a few things were suggested to him, and that's quite honestly at the request of Mr. Manis. You're constantly asking us, do we have any insight? Do we have any insight? What would you like to see? What would you like to see? So I do appreciate you constantly asking for our feedback and what we'd like to see on the audit, because we do come in 4 times a year, an extra hour early to spend with you in the small room back here in the corner. The catalyst for my what I asked Mr. Manis about before I formally asked him to add it to the audit was the high school facility usage, because let's don't forget the school board earlier this year, we updated, basically, not to get into too much nuance, the high schools, the sports facilities and different facilities for high schools used to go through scheduling through the Park Authority and now the Department of Parks and Recreation. This board passed something to say that now for high schools now exclusively goes through the school system and no longer the county government side of things. And as Mr. Manis talked about, there's been problems in the past, as there's going to be problems, but he's talked about problems with collection and people using facilities and if insurance was on record to use it and all those types of things that you can run into with facilities. And so the catalyst for this was those reasons, which we know exist. But now that this is entirely within the school system's purview and previous agreements, and I can't remember how it was when we cut off DPR, the Department of Parks and Recreation, but financially speaking, the money was 25%. At one point in time, 25% of revenues collected from outside groups using our facilities went to the school system, while 75% went to the Department of Parks and Recreation or Park Authority, whatever time frame it was. Now this is under the exclusive purview of the Prince William County School System. It's good that we have system checks and balances in place in system, and for Mr. Manis and his crew to go in and look at it and see. And so that's why I ultimately suggested, because it is a new process that this board passed and a new and basically eliminating DPR from the high school facilities, not middle schools and not elementary schools. I want to stress that, but just the high school side, and that's why this focuses just on that side of things, to make sure that we have the system in place to collect funds, make sure inappropriate groups are going through the proper system, and everybody's being charged in a proper manner to make sure there's not Title IX issues or any other issues that may occur if outside groups, if male groups are allowed to use facilities and girl groups aren't, or whatever the case may be, if that even is a Title IX issue. So we'd have to look at that. So there was all sorts of discussion in the internal audit, which will come out when our minutes are approved after our next internal audit meeting. But that was the gist of what it was, because the board action to approve high schools being exclusively under the umbrella for outside groups under Prince William County Schools.
And there also typically tends to be more usage by the high schools, and any type of control weaknesses there would be applicable to across the board. So
Correct.
It's a good group to take a look at.
That's a great point. You don't get me going down the sports field road for sure, but high schools are typically nicer. They're typically well lit or better lit, even if middle schools are lit. There's all sorts of reasons why more and more outside groups want to use high school facilities. The gyms are nicer, the hoops are or VHSL regulated. There's all sorts of VHSL rules, so that the fields have to meet certain specs, and those fields are more desirable. And so therefore, it also should include much more money coming in for the school system, being that we'll retain 100% of it now. So that's the idea behind it. Anything else? I'm sorry, Mr. Deutsch?
So we're doing item 1, is it a response to audit the results of the DPR agreement, or what's changed after the DPR agreement?
No. Yeah. This is, I'm sorry? Oh, okay. No, do you want to answer that? I'm sorry, Mr. Manis?
I don't see this as really being related to the DPR.
Oh, okay. I thought that was
This is just an area of risk within the school system that we think deserves another look to make sure that we have good controls around these processes. I was in favor of the audit being added. I think it would be well time spent, but I'm open to the.
So how does the DPR agreement play into this? Because we just passed it, I think, last spring.
What the impact that has is basically we have more monies now coming to the schools versus what was going to the Park Authority, and so we have a little more control over the process now than we did before. So that's actually a good thing for us, I think, and I think everybody else thinks. I hope.
Right, but if that's the change that sparked a need for an audit, we haven't had much time to actually see how that's played out, right?
I'm not of the opinion that that's necessarily is what was sparking it. I think this is just an area of risk. There's been prior internal audits in this area where we have identified issues, and this will be following up on that on a more concentrated look to kind of vet that out a little bit more thoroughly.
All right. Anyone else? Online voting is open. Let me just be clear. I'm sorry, I closed it. Let me read the motion. That the Prince William County School Board approve the 2018 annual audit plan and direct internal staff and management to work cooperatively and in partnership to fulfill the 2018 annual internal audit plan. Online voting is open.
Vote is 7 yes, 1 no. Deutsch, motion passed.
At the request of Mrs. Jessie, I would like to ask unanimous consent to jump ahead to item 17.01, simply because we have students in the audience that are here and families that are here for that item, and we're moving forward. And just to jump ahead, just to jump to that, and then we'll go right back to normal order. Unanimous consent. Thank you very much.
When are we doing citizen comment time?
We'll do citizens comment. We'll go right back to normal order right after item 17.01, because at Ms. Jessie's request, and I agree, but asking unanimous consent to jump ahead just for this one item, 17.01, because with the kids in the audience and whatnot.
How long is it going to take?
I have no idea, Mr. Deutsch. Mr. Deutsch's question is, how long is this going to take? I don't know the answer to that. Unanimous consent for item 17.01. With no objection, we're on item 17.01. Ms. Goss.
Good evening, Chairman Sawyers, school board members, and Dr. Waltz. Tonight we are here at the request of Vice Chairman Jessie to present the achievement data for Head Start, the Virginia Preschool Initiative, and the Virginia Preschool Initiative Plus. At this time, I would like to ask Kathy Channel, the supervisor of these preschool programs, to come forward and share the data with you.
Chairman Sawyers, members of the school board, Dr. Waltz, thank you so much for having me this evening. And thank you very much for moving us up on the agenda. All those people behind me will appreciate that as well. This evening, I have the pleasure of sharing data from the Head Start VPI and VPI Plus programs and the successes achieved in those programs. Our Title I pre-K program started in the middle of the year last year, so we don't have data on that program at this time, but we will in the future. Prince William County Public Schools currently serves 647 preschool students in Head Start VPI, VPI Plus, and an additional 142 in Title I, so for a total of 789 students. In the last 3 years, due to the expansion of VPI Plus and Title I pre-K programs, we have increased preschool enrollment opportunities by 54%. Before we get into the data, I wanted to briefly share with you about our students and the families that we serve. On the first slide, you see approximately 70% of our students have a primary language other than English, and around 10% of our total enrollment includes children who have IEPs. For families to qualify for the Head Start program, they must be below 100% of poverty. You see in the bottom right, a family of 4 with an income of less than $24,300 a year. For VPI and VPI Plus, the criteria for income is less than 200% of poverty. However, the graph will show there that 81% of our families are below 100% of poverty, and 16% are under 200%. As you know, we are providing comprehensive services not only for children, but for our families as well. We believe that we make the greatest impact for children by building on strong relationships with families. On this slide, you see the educational attainment of families. 44% of our parents do not have a high school diploma or a GED. We are working with our adult education department, and we are also partnering with Northern Virginia Community College to provide orientation sessions for our parents. We often see that the barrier to continued education is a lack of knowing how or where to enroll, and also having the support from one of our staff members that just lets the parent know, you can do it. Last year we had 54 parents enrolled in ESOL, 13 working towards their GED, and we had 30 enrolled in college. As well as educating the family service workers, partner with parents to set goals in the area of health, employment, improving parenting skills, and income support. Over 95% of all parents made progress towards their goals they set for themselves and for their families. All enrolled students are screened. using the phonological awareness literacy screening, or what we call PALS Pre-K. And here you see the fall scores for Head Start. The fall scores are in blue. The state benchmarks are in orange. The green represents the students' spring scores, followed by the maximum score for each one of those categories. And this data obviously indicates that children are exceeding the state benchmarks in all of these areas. This graph shows the results of VPI, again, students exceeding the benchmark in each area. And this chart shows our VPI plus PALS pre-K scores. We have followed 190 of these VPI students from last year who entered kindergarten in Prince William County schools this year. 173 of them met or exceeded the fall kindergarten benchmarks, and 34 of those students have already exceeded the spring benchmarks for kindergarten. We record students' outcome measures 3 times per year, in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And this chart shows the school readiness outcomes for Head Start and a history of the outcome data for the last 4 years. So under social emotional, we're looking at things like self-concept, self-control, social relationships. Approaches to learning would be things like initiative and curiosity, reasoning and problem solving. Language development would be listening, understanding, speaking, and communicating. Literacy is book knowledge, print awareness. Math would be things like numbers, patterns, measurement, problem solving. Science, classifying, predicting, drawing conclusions. Creative arts, the music, art, and movement. And physical health, which would be fine and gross motor. Our last slide shows the proficiency data for VPI and VPI plus. An analysis of more than 20 early childhood studies shows that children who participate in high-quality preschools are less likely to be retained or assigned to special education, and they're more likely to graduate from high school than peers who are not enrolled in such programs. So tonight, I thank you for your continued support and dedication to our youngest and most vulnerable students in our community. Thank you. It's good to bring your fan club.
Miss Jessie, I'm willing to bet that you would like the floor, so you may have it.
I don't know. You know, sometimes you on this board you have lots of assignments, and this has to be my favorite. And I think if you had not assigned me reassigned me, I would have said something. I don't know what I would have said, but I would have begged you to really reconsider. Kathy Channel, I think your last name is Chandler. You just, I sit there in amazement because as a principal, you're supposed to have an advisory council. And I would always pray that people showed up. And I know Ms. Goss and I share that, principals do. But every time I walk in that room, those chairs are filled. Everything is done in such a professional manner. And I am just so honored to have an opportunity to work with these parents. And the way you guys just, sometimes some of your speakers maybe don't have the facility with the language, and you've worked that out so that everybody participate. And Robert's Rules of Order, by the way, they follow those. And she gently helps all the parents. The parents pretty much run the meeting. And I am just excited about it. I wanted to tell you that this is perfect timing for me because I've, in the last couple of weeks, and I know that PWA will also attest to this, there's been so much talk about Finland. You know, why can't we be like Finland? You know, the high-scoring country. And in fact, I've written an article that's going to come out on it, and part of the article said we probably don't want to be like Finland. There are parts of it, but the one piece that I think is so critical is that in Finland, every single child has preschool, not just preschool, but early childhood education. When the mothers are after their pregnancy, they're given books for their infants, to read to their infants. And of course, it's all paid for, and the children don't really enter school until age 7. So one of the questions I have a couple. One is, do we track these students who go through Head Start to see whether or not the trajectory continues, because the data is just phenomenal? Do we track them?
Yes, so we're tracking especially our VPI children. So now our first class of VPI children are in first grade. And so at this spring, they will start tracking their scores backwards. And we've already looked at our PALs because we needed to submit that to the state. So we've already looked at the PAL scores. That's what I was saying about out of the 190 that we tracked, 173 already met or exceeded the fall benchmarks for kindergarten.
I think collecting that type of longitudinal data will help us. I think that in Richmond now, when I go to Richmond, I'm always talking about preschool education, and I hope there's an appetite for preschool education. I think actually if they ever want someone to come down to Richmond, I think, Kathy, you would be the person, because you've done this for so many years and done such a good job. The other question I have is a couple. One, how many students do you have on the waiting list? Two, the high schools where you don't have facilities, we've got a problem with that. Where are you in high school? And I think, go ahead and answer those two questions for me, please.
Okay, so we're at Colgan, Hilton, Freedom, Garfield, Patriot.
Yeah, because we don't have the space in the elementary schools or for
In
those
each
kids.
one of those high schools,
Yeah.
we have a partnership with our career and tech ed, and so our students that are taking early childhood or child development are coming over and using our school as a lab school. So we see ourselves as a lab school for the high school students.
So I just want to point out the
It's
need.
it's not just, excuse me, Miss Jessie, it's not just the students that are taking early childhood, but you know, the art students come down and the music students come down and share.
Yeah.
And later this spring, our Colgan kids are actually going to start using the pool.
Yeah. The need for a preschool facility or something of that nature is something that we want to consider. And I guess the big question for me is, could you explain to the audience the grant that you have and what's going to happen with that down the road, and I guess how many students are on your waiting list?
Our community assessment shows that we have approximately 1,500 students in Prince William County that would qualify either for Head Start or VPI or VPI Plus. And so obviously we don't put 1,500 children on a waiting list. We're serving 786 of them. But we do keep waiting lists at all of our schools, so that if we do have a child who drops or moves, that we automatically put another child in right away. And I'm sorry, the second part of your question was?
I think we were talking about the grant.
Oh, grant. So the Head Start grant is $3.2 million. The VPI Plus grant is $2.4. Our VPI program is worth $500,000, and
Doesn't one of those run out, though, Ms.?
our Head Start grant is a continuation grant. The VPI Plus grant we've had for 3 years. We have it for 1 more year. Our VPI grant is a state and local funded program, and that is continuous as well.
I just want you to know, I know members of this board, that we will be advocating, so the new people in Richmond will be there and we'll be advocating for you guys. And I just want to thank you, and all these people showing up for you, I mean, really just shows what this program is really all about. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rehash something here. I just want to make sure I got it right, that you said it without having to go back and watch the whole board meeting tomorrow on the internet. Is the Head Start, you said, is a recurring, and that's how much?
It's 3.2.
3.2, and then the VPI?
VPI is $500,000.
And then the VPI Plus?
VPI Plus is 2.5, 2.4.
And which one runs out?
VPI Plus
Next year,
in 19.
after the 2018-19 school year. And you said that's a combination of state and local funding?
The VPI is state and local funding.
Yes, the $500,000.
The VPI grant was a federal grant that the Virginia Department of Education applied for and received, and then the funding came to Prince William County with the approval of the board.
I apologize, but all of my questions are about funding, so we don't, yeah, and this is all for later in budget season, not to put you on the spot. And if you don't have the answer, please just tell me you don't, and we'll move on. So is there any, and I may be confusing things, are we leaving any money on the table with matching? Anywhere along the way on the government side, are we?
There is more VPI money on the table than we currently match.
There is more is there more that we're not matching?
There is more that we are not
And what is roughly that number from the HIP, or send it to me in an email?
I would like to.
You would prefer to send that one in an email?
I would.
You don't want to overshoot by $1 million or two, right? I mean, what's $1 million? I would appreciate that, is to know what you think we're leaving on the table by not matching, and impacting the double amount of students that money would help. And for the sake of everyone's time, I may have some follow-ups. I'm sure I'm welcome to email you. Is that correct?
You are.
I'm sure I will. Or I'll send them through Dr. Waltz's office, of course, as well, as we need to. But that was my questions. I really appreciate it. Mr. Wilk and then Ms. Williams.
Thank you for coming tonight. Obviously, and I echo the same words as Ms. Jessie about, I think there will be a renewed focus with this administration. Especially in light of the recent appointment of Dr. Constantino, actually a former Prince William County principal, who's in his own books talks about family engagement, and one of those is empowering every family. And if you look at the research and your own data and what you've showed about, educating diverse learners, different languages, students with disabilities, lower socioeconomic levels, this is in alignment perfectly with that program. And I will remind the board, we haven't talked about it a lot this year, but Patty Elementary, we talked about there will be opportunity for us to expand and grow potentially next year with the building that will be available at Washington Reed across the street. So I hope the board, when we look at the budget season, if this is a major initiative and push of ours, we continue with that progress, because we have a great opportunity to expand this program for these students.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. You were shorter than I thought you'd be. Ms. Williams.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, with your mouth full. Ms. Channel.
Yes.
There's just not enough words of praise for the job that you do for us in Prince William County.
It's not the job I do. It's the job that all those people
Oh,
out
yes,
there
ma'am. I knew you were going to say that. I'm going to get to them, too, because you're just that awesome. I'd also like to share some of that praise to Mr. Bassett and Ms. Goss.
Yes.
But I know from my Board Matters taping this year especially, even though I've been to plenty of preschool classrooms in my district, but I had such a good time at Featherstone. I see some of my Featherstone parents back there. Hey, not only was I able to do my Board Matters taping in there, but I was fully educated by the little ones in the room, because they were incorporating their garden outside into their educational process inside. And I got full
fully brought up to speed on different sized watermelon and colored tomatoes and sizes. And it was just an amazing thing. And I bring that up because there were also parents in the room, and along with the teachers, and the family engagement and the amount of learning that occurs in that room, and how excited the little ones were, it's just infectious. I mean, it's one of those opportunities. Elementary is still one of my favorite times, but it's just one of those opportunities that, like, I got down on my hands and knees and sat down and learned and sat in the circle time, because they make you want to do that. And it was just awesome. And I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone who participates in helping our preschool children learn, because it is definitely something that is done from all angles, and I'm a firm believer in that, and it just excites me to no end. As a parent of a preschooler now who is it's so serious to me, and I'm just going to say this and share a little bit of my personal information, but as a college graduate who works full-time professionally, who makes more than the median income in our county, I can barely afford to send my 4-year-old to preschool. So I hope that everyone hears that, you know, it's not just the people who are 200% or 100% below poverty level. It's working class families who are in between that are also suffering. And I am firmly pushing, as long as I possibly can, whether I'm on this board or not, that we can expand preschool. As a parent, I know the value of it. As a recipient of being in preschool way back when, I know that it contributed to my educational foundation and furthered my love of learning. And I do not believe that any child who can attend preschool should not be able to attend preschool. It is just, and especially in today's educational environment, it's just almost an absolute mandatory thing. And I am just so proud of the work that we do in this county, and it means so much to me. And I know that they stood up before, but I just would like to give one more round of applause to all of the people who are involved in starting our children off in the right path, because we don't see them often enough, and we don't get to applaud them often enough. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to assume regular order here. And we are on to student representative matters and alternative representative matters. Ms. Arnold.
I'm going to give everybody a second to file out if you're leaving.
I concur, Ms. Arnold.
I think she's coming for your job.
She is. She's got it.
I see you down there, Ms. Arnold, coming for the chairman's job.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. I hope that everybody had a wonderful break. I know that I enjoyed spending some time of a break in New York with my family, which was an awesome and much-needed getaway, and I hope you guys had time to spend with your family as well. I have a couple of items I would like to bring up this evening, and I would like to begin by posing a question to the school board. Last meeting, when I mentioned the introduction of town hall meetings as a way for the student representatives to hear from their constituents, I also proposed the idea that as needs arise, meetings with individual schools may become necessary. In light of the vocal nature of parent groups from Woodbridge High School on the topic of the school's infrastructure, I believe that such a need seems to have shown itself, and I was interested in arranging a town hall meeting with the student body of Woodbridge to allow me to get their opinions on the topic. I feel as if this meeting is necessary both so that I may better represent students' interests when we discuss budgeting around this very hot-button issue, but also so that students are taught that participation in local governments will result in officials taking action to respond. I feel as if this is of utmost importance, as I believe that the very reason for the existence of my position is to encourage student participation in their education. However, before I go forward with the planning of this town hall, I would like to get the opinions of each board member on this matter, and I will only go forward with this town hall if the majority of the board approves. While I may have questions on whether or not the board approves of the organizing of a Woodbridge-specific town hall, my proposition for magisterial district town halls seemed to be met with the approval of citizens and board members alike. As such, I would like to go forward with the planning of such town halls for every magisterial district. As previously mentioned, I think it is very important for the board member to be present at the town hall for his or her respective district, and as such, would like to work out dates so that they can attend. Board members can expect correspondence from me in upcoming weeks to designate specific dates for the meetings in each district. My current plan is to begin these meetings in February, with meetings falling on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month, when there aren't board meetings, with room to make adjustments for when there are conflicts, such as work sessions. However, this is a rough plan, which is flexible and open for input. While I am aware that the schedule I just proposed will only make it possible for me to meet with each district once while I am in this position, I hope that it will set a precedent for student representatives to come and allow them to follow this system to meet with each district multiple times throughout the year, as I hope that student representatives to come will be chosen early enough in the year that they will have a full school year in their position. I also wish to take this time to begin a practice of spotlighting a student during student representative matters, as students' accomplishments deserve to be celebrated. This week, I wish to congratulate Ricky Slade, a junior from Hilton High School, who made Prince William County headlines this week when he signed to play football for Penn State University. We are very proud of Ricky, and we can't wait to see what his college career will hold. If principals have any students that they wish to include in future student spotlights, please send me an email. Finally, Dr. Waltz, a few dozen students have stopped me in the hallway today to let me know that my job as student representative would not be complete if I didn't tell you that they want a snow day. So now that that message has been passed along, I feel comfortable saying I have fully updated everyone on the latest buzz in the busy world of our students. Thank you so much for your time, and Happy New Year once more.
Thank you, Kate. Maheen and Zaki, if you have any words, do you have words that you'd like to share? Maheen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board and Dr. Waltz. I want to wish everyone a happy holiday season as we pass. I hope everyone enjoyed their winter break. As the budget season approaches, I want to take the time to encourage our students to utilize the many opportunities presently available to share their concerns and inquiries throughout the budget process. As Ms. Arnold referenced earlier, the prospects of engaging our students in discourse over their educational experiences during town halls is an exciting initiative, in that we as students decided to come to this fruition with the approval of the school board. In the meantime, I encourage students to share their experiences with their respective school board members, their student leadership organizations, and their student representative, Ms. Arnold. A world-class education is not cheap, and every penny is crucial to fulfilling the needs of our students. Insight from the people affected the most from our school budget, the students themselves, will ensure that our school district can best serve all of our students. On a different note, I find great joy with the action taken today regarding the resolution to designate February as the National Career and Technical Education Month, or CTE. It's indeed remarkable, the opportunities offered by our CTE programs in Prince William County schools. They provide our students with real-world workplace readiness skills and allow them to mature in their respective career paths in the classroom without the presence of the real-world competitive workplace that could hinder such growth at such an early stage. The widening range of offerings from Project Lead the Way for biomedical science at Osborne Park, auto technology at Hilton, and a DEAR program that I've had the pleasure to witness at Potomac Senior High School, the welding production program, in which students are able to represent actively and presently the examples of the potential that CTE has to offer for our students. In fact, the welding production program is provided with dual enrollment opportunities through Northern Virginia Community College, an excellent collegiate offering during the high school period. Let's not forget the excellent engineering and business-related organizations such as FBLA and DECA that further nurtured our students in their growth and in their interests in such fields. As priorities continuously shift in our evolving educational environment, we, the students, firmly believe in the continued focus on our CTE programs due to their diverse and prosperous educational benefits unique to these programs. They're like multiple clay in the sense of they're unique to each student. Because here in Prince William County, I have my years here, I witnessed that we don't believe in cookie-cutter education. Each education for each student is unique to their own, and CTE provides that opportunity. Today's destination is a symbolic representation of this focus, and I thank the school board for doing so. I look forward to the activities planned in February for this recognition of national career and technical education, and look forward to the opportunities of these students when they take part in these great programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Maheen. Is Zaki here? No? Okay. All right. We are moving on to citizens' comment time. We have 5 speakers signed up ahead of time, 4 at the door. I'll announce all 9 speakers, and as we get through that, you're welcome to come up and use the chairs in the front if you would like. The order of speakers will be Chrissy Falls, Sue Johnson, Miranda Faust, Jennifer Gilly, Sandra Kern, Kate Olson Flynn, Carter Gilly, Abram Marsh, and I think Carter's on here twice. Unless there's 2 Carters here to speak. So we'll have 8 speakers, I think. All right, everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. I will keep the time here on the computer if I remember to click the button. It'll be kept on the scoreboard here above my right shoulder. At 30 seconds, it turns yellow, and it means it's time to wrap, or getting time to wrap it up, or if you have 30 seconds to wrap it up, and then at 0 seconds, it turns red. It means it's time to stop. Obviously, proper decorum is to be used at all times when addressing the board, and we will start right away with Chrissy Falls. Ms. Falls.
Good evening. I'm here again to bring the attention to the subject of substance abuse. My daughter, a Stonewall Jackson High School student, came to you at the first meeting of the school year to speak about Red Ribbon Week and asked for your participation. I myself talked about the dangers of drugs in our county and gave you the facts. A few weeks after we spoke, other students spoke about Red Ribbon Week and gave you all your red ribbons. The same red ribbons that were supposed to be distributed within the schools paid for by Prince William County Community Services through dedicated funding to the Prevention Alliance of Greater Prince William Coalition, which I am a member of. The Office of Student Services even brought forth a Red Ribbon Week proclamation, which the school board recognized as well. The Board of County Supervisors recognized their own proclamation in October. While the public awareness and proclamations are appreciated, I'm still concerned about the lack of transparency and consistent substance abuse prevention and education in the school system, and I hope you will put words on paper into action. I personally invited you all to attend our first and second opioid town hall meetings, which were hosted at Forest Park High School and Stonewall Jackson High School, specifically to engage the school system. Sadly, not one member of the board attended. As a member of the coalition and a parent of 2 children in Prince William County middle and high schools, neither child came home with one of those ribbons, and even more upsetting, it seems that Stonewall Jackson High School didn't even participate in Red Ribbon Week. I understand that our schools are site-based and it is up to each individual school to do as they please. But was discouraging to see the lack of involvement on a subject proven to need immediate attention. Our second opioid discussion night was at Stonewall Jackson High School purposely during Red Ribbon Week to highlight community and school substance abuse prevention initiatives. So it was upsetting to not have them participate in Red Ribbon Week. They didn't even send out a flyer to the parents. An effort that doesn't take much to do. I even dropped off flyers personally to put up in the main office. They didn't. Absolutely no participation in prevention. I even reached out to the principal as a parent and got no response. That's okay. We'll have one at Battlefield soon as our third school opioid discussion night, since now that a community is upset by a child finding an empty soda bottle full of used needles inside one of their communities. This is a true problem in our community that is impacting students and learning. How does a child learn when taking prescription drugs or smoking marijuana or worrying about a drug-addicted parent or loved one? They don't, and it impacts you. Let's talk about recent news before the holiday break, shall we? First week in December, there
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Our next speaker is Sue Johnson. Sue?
Hi, thank you for your time. Good evening, Chairman Sawyer, school board members, and Dr. Waltz. I'm here to urge you to please consider allocating funds to Woodbridge Senior High School as you plan and approve your budget. And I thank you, Ms. Arnold, for your words. It's very inspiring to hear. I wish I was like you when I was in school, because learning this process has been really good. And I also want to thank Mr. Mulgrew and the principal and activities director and Mr. Windley for emails and meetings that they've had with me and some of the other concerned parents to understand the process of budgeting, how it works, and I've been to advisory meetings. I've learned a lot there as well. But a lot of us have come to the conclusion that there are needs at Woodbridge that cannot be met with a work order for facilities or the principal's discretionary funds, excuse me. Case in point, my son is a member of the indoor percussion team. If you're not familiar with this, imagine a show choir for drums, and then mix in a little marching band halftime show. It's kind of cool. The competition takes place on a gymnasium floor, per the competition space regulations, and there are a lot of rules. And we do really well. We win a lot of competitions. And by the way, there's a winter guard team that does the same thing except with rifles, and not real ones, rifles and flags, and it's a pretty neat show as well. So when me and some other band booster parents go to the activities director and say, hey, we need some gym space to practice for the culminating event, he's like, okay, but I also have 5 basketball teams that have to share the same one usable gym floor. So we sit there and we talk and we work it out, and we practice on Saturday nights from 6 to 11 p.m. His basketball teams often go past 10 p.m. And the guard has a totally another schedule they work out. And we get creative. We use Lake Ridge Middle School. We use Woodbridge Middle School. In our program, we have kids from Colgan, Forest Park, a few other schools as well, and Stonewall Jackson and Potomac. And you could say, well, go to their schools. They have more accommodations. But please don't do that. Don't take away something that's pretty awesome for our kids and gives them another enhancing great opportunity. I would love for those other schools to have this program too. Have more kids be able to do this. So we just need a little bit more attention to the facilities for a bigger budget, and so I just ask you to consider that and give us a reward for these great programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Miranda Faust. Miranda? Faust? Miranda Faust? No? Jennifer Gilly? Jennifer?
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Gilly. My address is on file. For the last year, I've come to many of these meetings talking about Woodbridge High School, specifically the football team, and how proud I was of the accomplishments that they have made despite the obstacles of all of our sports teams face. You also saw the Woodbridge High School drama program right here last spring. Again, despite the limited resources, they have excelled. Even though it is in the teens outside right now, actually I hear it's snowing, spring is close, and the Viking track team will once again open their equipment storage, chase away the rats, the snakes, the spiders, and the mice to find equipment that needs to be completely replaced due to lack of storage space in the building. They can't store the equipment. They end up getting rid of it every year, and then they spend money to buy new equipment. It's a cycle. We've shared our concerns about the CFPA program that was taken away from Woodbridge High School. We've shared our concerns about the money spent on the newer schools in the county, despite the older schools in the county having many issues and not being brought up to par in a timely manner. Tonight I'm here to talk about the many, many families that moved to Northern Virginia to raise families, specifically the military. I don't know how many of you are military families. I married into it. Let me give you a few scenarios. When you first get married, it's a great adventure moving from place to place. Then comes the children. Moves get so much more exciting at that point. But once school starts, the stress really begins. Each time you move, you need to find a great neighborhood and schools for your children, sometimes while your spouse is deployed. Luckily, there is a website called greatschools.org. Maybe you've heard of it. This is a website that many families reference just to find schools in the area. I know it's not 100% accurate, but it does give families, especially families overseas, an idea of, wow, this is a good school. This is a good neighborhood I should move to. Let me tell you, a school that's rated a 3 is not something high on my list that I want to send my children to. My point is, if we don't improve, specifically Woodbridge High School, what is going to draw these families to come to the Lake Ridge area to want to raise their children as Vikings? If I can move to Dale City and go to Colgan, it's only a couple exits down I-95. Can't be that bad of a drive. Little do they know. We've been saying it over and over, whether intentional or not, the inequities in this county are a slap in the face to our community. The newer schools must have all the best and the greatest when you build them, which is more money going to the students at those schools means better opportunities. Eventually, the other schools will be fixed or replaced. We hear we will be getting a new high school in 2026 in the Lake Ridge area. Does Woodbridge get torn down at that point? What do we tell families that are living here now? Just wait 9 more years, keep your kids where they are? Until then, there's money in your budget that needs to be spent on these older schools to afford these students the same opportunities that that other students in our county have opportunities for. Please consider Woodbridge High School, the students and the staff when you're discussing your budget.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sandra Kern. Sandra?
Good evening, Honorable Chairman, distinguished school board members, superintendent, staff, or community advocates, parents. My name is Sandra Kern. My address is on file. I'm the parent of Hunter Huff, a 6th grade student at Potomac Middle School. First off, I'm certain all of you are aware that hundreds of students with special needs and individual education plans in place are being educated in the public system. My son is one of those, many with an IEP. On December 8th, there was a horrible experience on bus number 822 on the ride home from school. On December 22nd, I sent each member of this board an email that encompassed my immediate concern for safety for my son and the children on the bus that day. Safety of all students should be your priority. My son does have special needs and has had an IEP since he was 4 years old from the Office of Child Find at the time. Currently, I have great concern for the school's lack of follow-through on my son's education and special needs. There have been several trips to the school for review. A few of the current acronyms that I've had to brush up on are IDA, ADA, FERPA, FIO, and of course, protocol. I'm a product of the public school system, Prince William County. And as well, I intend for each one of my children to be educated and kept safe by the school board and the public school system. A student's safety and parents' concern have been presented to you. I have copies of emails for anyone who did not receive or review my concern. Second point, children with special needs have a right to an education that is in a safe environment. The employees of the school system should be properly trained to address needs of children in duress rather than calling the police to place a 12-year-old student with disabilities in handcuffs on a side of a busy road on a very cold day. This was my son's personal experience. I savor the moment to say I am very concerned for other children who do not get the voice their issues to those of you who make decisions. Educating transportation services on special needs of children who are inclusive arrangements should be addressed. Just because a student does not look a certain way or respond as expected does not give anyone the right to bully or judge. A 12-year-old in handcuffs. Let that thought sink in. We have a problem. I look forward to an immediate response. While the board was enjoying their winter break, my son had sleepless nights, major headaches, a sheer anxiety over returning to obtain his education in a safe environment. We have had to apply for homebound, a gatekeeper at best for education for him. What is your plan? I thank you for your time and welcome back to work for the children of Prince William County in 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, we're on to the sign up at the door sheet, is Kate Olson Flynn. Kate?
Happy New Year, Board and Superintendent Waltz. I'm happy to be here again to talk about equity in the budget process, about allocating CIP funds to renovate Woodbridge High School. Educational equity and excellence is not just an ideal that we talk about in an ethereal way, but it's a principle to which all school divisions, administrators, teachers, parents should aspire and work. It is the practice of making each day, each year, each school experience for each child, no matter their race, religion, ethnicity, language, or socioeconomic status, or how old their school is, the best and most advantageous for his or her well-being and academic aspirations. And what does educational equity and excellence look like? Of course, we should start with the heart of schools, the principals and teachers. Woodbridge has one of the best hearts around. Its teachers, principal, and staff are some of the hardest working people who achieve high standards despite the odds of an outdated school with old equipment and a facility with no windows. In terms of a healthy body, Having a good heart is essential to success and a level of achievement, but you need a healthy body and mind for equity and excellence to exist. This means that each school needs to have facilities and its functions to enable and nurture students with opportunities to succeed in the 21st century. Equity means that a school has lights to go on at night in all areas and bathrooms of the school. That equity means that a school has fields to allow all kids, boys and girls, to play and practice their sports safely. That it has an atmosphere that is uplifting with windows, that feels like a place that you want to be instead of a place of incarceration that you need to escape. Equity means having bathrooms that provide students with the dignity of using the facilities in ways that respect their privacy. This is the equity for which we've been pleading this past year. This is what Woodbridge needs. It is what other schools have and what we deserve in order to have a healthy body. What is left is a healthy mind, the programs that are offered to students. That's where excellence comes into the equity equation. There is no equity if programs are being taken away without community consent and not replaced with others. Not only did Colgan get top-notch facilities, but it took our programs, leaving Woodbridge with nothing but its AP Scholar and cosmetology programs, which are good. But while these programs are good, they are not special, they are not unique. Colgan, Osborne Park, Patriot, and others all have and promote their own AP and pre-AP classes. Our project Lead the Way isn't unique either. Osborne Park and Colgan both have them. So both of those schools are taking away students from Woodbridge who are academically oriented. This is not educational equity. To that end, I implore the board to think about how to make Woodbridge whole again. Please allocate money in the CIP to rebuild the body of Woodbridge and renew its mind with a specialty program that is academically focused, perhaps in writing, journalism, research. That would provide a world-class education to our students and our kids as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let everyone know, hopefully the timer will work this time. I clicked it 100 times last time and it wouldn't come up. So I will run it at the same time on my phone and hopefully it stays on the board. And if it disappears, I'll have the old backup watch like the NFL referees do down on the field. The bajillion-dollar scoreboard goes out. Our next speaker is Carter Gilley. Carter?
Hello, my name is Carter Gilley. I'm a student at Woodbridge High School. I've noticed other schools have cushioned booths in their lunchrooms. We have wooden benches. Other schools have outdoor seating. We all sit inside. Not everybody has a chance to eat due to the limited space in our cafeteria. Another thing is a lot of kids don't want to go to our school. We have a high absentee rate. I credit this to the lack of classroom windows. It makes the room dark and depressing. Our weight room is very small. Most teams have trouble working out because they can't use the same space all at the same time. We have spaces around the weight room that we could turn into additional workout spaces. Another thing is our fields. They're straight mud halfway through the football, field hockey, lacrosse, and soccer seasons. Other schools in this county have complained about small leaks in their greenhouses while we don't even have safe fields. I believe a turf field will solve our mud problem. Also, bathrooms at the stadium are unacceptable. There are no individual urinals in the boys' bathroom. Instead, there are 2 long troughs. Woodbridge has had its specialty programs reduced to 2, while other schools around here have 6. Not to mention, one of these programs was taken from Woodbridge and added to a school with multiple other programs. Lastly, I have noticed that Woodbridge and a few other schools on the eastern side of Prince William County have a higher minority percentage than those of the west side. I hope this is not a reason for why the western schools are being benefited over the eastern schools. I came here to let you know about these problems because they are real. Nobody put me up to this. I've just noticed a couple problems, and I don't see anything wrong with trying to fix them.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, and I believe our final speaker, is Abram Marsh. Abram?
Happy New Year, Board. Chairman Wilkes, I want to thank you for this opportunity to come before you. I pray that each of you enjoyed a wonderful and happy holiday. I come before you again, it seems like almost every year around this time, because it seems that one area, particularly one school, continues to have its borders addressed. And I know that's going to be discussed shortly. As I understand from from our representative regarding the Neabsco school redistricting. That affects two schools, Montclair and Wilson. And I come again, like I said before you, to ask that you reject the proposal that is outlined. And I do that for three reasons. First and foremost, the projections that are provided are not necessarily informed by the actuals. And that's clear in that the student population numbers present, as you'll see, an erroneous picture of what the actual student population of the schools are. So therefore, if you're going to make a decision on what it's supposed to be, it's going to draw you to the wrong conclusion. There's approximately 120 students currently assigned to Wilson, and this actual number exceeds the division's projected number of 2024 of 799, and we already have that today. So adding 120 more students is not going to, is actually going to cause Wilson to more than likely be overcrowded in just 8 months from now, if that proposal is instituted. Secondly, the matter of transportation constrains your already constrained transportation fleet. You're going to need 4 buses dedicated to ship kids 3 miles across town to Wilson, whereas Montclair and Neabsco are approximately a mile to a mile and a half away from their homes. This is also going to constrain many of those families who don't have transportation themselves. So if your kid is sick and you can't walk to the school, there is no public transportation that's going to bus you down Minnieville to go pick up your sick kid. Lastly, the overcrowding issue, again, this is the 3rd year that it's affected Wilson. And I'm not just saying that because my son goes to Wilson, my daughter will go to Wilson. I'm saying this because I think that you all have a better way. And the better way is what you all did on the Eastern District. You all looked at 10 schools along the Route 1 corridor. My recommendation is that you delay this proposal until the Prince William Parkway Elementary School is developed, and then do that at that time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, that concludes citizens' comment time. And we are moving on to item 16.01, which is student housing, elementary school attendance area recommendations 2018-19, Neabsco, Montclair, and Wilson Elementary Schools. Mr. Erickson, it's been a while. It's all you.
Chairman Sawyers, Vice Chairman Jesse, members of the school board, Dr. Waltz, Happy New Year. In our continued efforts to reduce the need for trailers and enhance building use division-wide, we bring to you this evening a proposal for a boundary adjustment involving 3 elementary schools that we believe would best balance the use of these schools. Actually, we would like to revisit one component of last year's major boundary changes that involved the opening of Covington Harper and the new Kilby Elementary, plus additions at Belmont, Neabsco, Henderson, and other schools. With me today is Mr. David Klein, Associate Superintendent for Finance and Support Services, Dr. Matthew Cartledge, Supervisor for Planning, and Mr. David Beavers, Supervisor for Planning and Financial Services. Dr. Cartledge will be presenting our proposal.
Good evening, Vice Chairman and school board members and Dr. Waltz. My name is Dr. Cartledge. I'm the Supervisor of Planning in the Office of Facility Services. I'm presenting an opportunity to reduce overcrowding at Neabsco Elementary by leveraging available space at adjacent schools. The presentation will begin with a brief discussion of previously completed capital improvements. Afterwards, we will discuss the major milestones in the boundary planning process. We will then discuss the capacity utilization rates at Neabsco Elementary, Montclair, and Wilson. Lastly, a proposed boundary plan will be presented for your consideration. Recalling the capital improvement projects completed for this current school year will offer some context to how we arrived at where we are today. There were classroom additions constructed at Neabsco, Henderson, and Belmont. Kilby Elementary was replaced by a larger facility on site, and one additional elementary school was opened in the Potomac Shores community this school year. Last fall, in anticipation of these soon-to-be completed projects, a boundary planning committee was formed. It ultimately recommended its most preferred boundary plan, commonly referred to as Plan 6, to the school board for its consideration. The school board approved a modified version of Plan 6 that ultimately contributed to the adjustment of 16 elementary schools for the 2017-18 school year. Some of these modifications contributed to the overutilization of Neabsco Elementary. It presently requires 12 portable classrooms and 1 restroom trailer to provide adequate housing for its students. Moving forward, a public forum was held this past December to discuss the reconsideration of the boundary adjustments involving Neabsco, Wilson, and Montclair that were in the Boundary Planning Committee's Plan 6. At the meeting, the current landscape along the Minnieville corridor was shared, as was this map. The shaded areas represent the current attendance areas for these 3 schools. Wilson and Montclair are close, essentially located in their attendance areas, as you can see on the map. Also on the map, we have the current utilization rates at these 3 schools. Wilson is at about 74% of capacity. Neabsco is at 119% of capacity, and Montclair is at roughly 80% of capacity. I'd like to point out that there is a 45% imbalance in capacity utilization between 2 elementary schools that share a boundary. On this chart, for each line, you can view how many students are projected based on the current attendance areas for these 3 schools. Additionally, you can identify the demographic composition of these schools as it was on September 30th of this school year. Lastly, on this chart, I'd like to direct your focus to the number of portable classrooms that are present. At Neabsco, there are 12, and there are 0 portable classrooms at the other 2 schools. The presence of portable classrooms suggests that a need for additional space is present at the school that is being unmet. To offer some historical context, there were 5 portable classrooms present at Neabsco in the 2016-17 school year. These are being used for instruction, while the 8 classroom addition was under construction. Moving slightly forward in time, after the addition was completed and the boundaries were set, there was a decision made to leave 2 of those portable classrooms on site that were being used for construction purposes, and an additional 5 were brought in beyond the 1 bathroom trailer to adequately house students that were anticipated to arrive September 30th of this current school year. Coming back to the present time, the footprint of the classroom addition, coupled with the 12 portable classrooms and the 1 restroom trailer, is reducing the amount of field space at Neabsco Elementary. Now I'd like to provide an overview of a proposed boundary adjustment that is consistent with what the Boundary Planning Committee previously proposed 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago to the day. This map is an overview at a larger scale that shows the area under consideration. The areas that are shaded in blue and red are currently assigned to Neabsco Elementary. The proposal is to reassign the blue portion of Neabsco's attendance area to Wilson Elementary and the red portion to Montclair. We can zoom in a little bit more to get a little bit higher clarity of the particular streets under consideration. So one thing that I do want to point out is that the area being proposed for reassignment to Montclair is actually uniting a community that is currently split between 2 different schools. With this table, it is providing you the projected figures and associated demographics associated with the proposed boundary adjustments. On the next slide, there is an opportunity to view these figures in a more visually appealing way and graphically. On the subsequent slide after that one, we can view the figures associated with the current boundaries, the proposed boundary, and then we've done the math for you all, and you'll see the differences between the two. So I'll just go ahead and skip forward to the charts. Just to walk you through these charts, the green bars are representative of the projected number of students based on the current attendance area. The blue bars are representing those same schools, but based on adjusted attendance areas. The red bar for each graph is representing the full capacity utilization, or the program capacity, of the 3 schools under consideration. You can observe the imbalance between these schools that are somewhat proximate to each other and are in fact sharing boundaries between the schools. If you compare the blue charts, or the blue bars in the charts, you'll see that there is actually a better balancing between the 3 schools if the features that were present in Plan 6 are approved. The figures on this slide are intended to provide easier comparison of the effects of the boundary adjustment. You'll notice that 156 students are proposed for reassignment away from Neabsco next year. Those will be divided between Montclair and Wilson, with 118 projected students going to Wilson and 38 attending Montclair. You'll notice that Montclair and Wilson will be each around 86% of capacity utilization. It balances quite nicely between those 2 schools. If you focus on Neabsco, you'll see that without any boundary adjustments, we're anticipating it to be at about 120% of capacity next year. With this adjustment, we could bring that down to 97% and be at near full utilization. Looking ahead, this recommendation is scheduled to be up for a vote as an action item at the next school board meeting. There will also be a public hearing at this meeting that will provide community members an opportunity to address the board prior to each of you making your decision on the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one basic question. I know the local members will probably have more. Just for my own brain and clarification, because obviously not my neck of the woods in the county, just want to make sure I'm on the same page. Children or families currently attending Wilson or Montclair aren't moving. Correct. There's no changes to anyone currently attending those 2 schools.
Correct.
Only Neabsco.
There is no one being pushed out of either of those schools to make room for Neabsco.
Only from Neabsco to one of those 2.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure I was
Montclair
perfectly clear on that.
Neabsco.
That was the one question I had. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Ms. Ralston?
Thank you very much. To make up for the mistake of last year, it wasn't your fault. You know, I know more about this than you do. So that's how you get this kind of numbers. So I was really pleased, you know, because people were really, they understood what we were talking about, you guys were talking about. And so they're ready for this move. The good thing that I like is that Montclair stays right there, all their students. And I don't think, are any children moving from, what's the other one that's in Montclair?
Henderson?
No. Henderson, yeah. Nobody's moving from Henderson, right?
Correct. No moves for Henderson.
And so when do we think we're going to do this for next year?
So our recommendation would be to implement next year.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. Anyone else? Mr. Wilk, do you want to go?
I just have a couple of things to jump in. Personally, the timeline, I think, is really quick, in my opinion. especially if this is going to go into place next year anyways. I personally would like to have a little bit more time to talk with Montclair and that community and that principal and stuff like that, and maybe look at maybe making the vote in the February board meeting. Is there drama or budget on the agenda then? I'm sure there's drama. Yeah. Okay.
Just a point of information that this is ultimately, this issue on the agenda is the superintendent's item, not the board's item. So ultimately, it'd be you'd have to talk with him and his staff.
I'm just
so you
making
know.
a recommendation because I just, in my opinion, I'd like a little bit more time to talk with them. I feel like this kind of happened fast. And although, again, I like the idea that it's not taking any existing Montclair kids out of the building, I want to talk with the building and the community a little bit more and get a better gauge. Because, of course, the opposite was true. I heard that when we kept it at this way and we made this vote last year, I had some parents from Montclair claiming that this was going to cost them an assistant principal, a potential choir teacher. So I saw both sides of this. So that's just my initial thoughts, to be able to go back to them and talk a little bit more. That would just be my recommendation. But that's my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. I would like to go. I'm sorry, board members, if you don't mind, for my information's sake, are we talking 3 different schools in 3 different magisterial districts? Is that what I'm understanding here? Just for my own clarification, it's an amazing feat that we accomplished right there. So okay, I want to make sure. So I want to get the 3 magisterial members before we moved on to anyone else. Mr. Deutsch.
All right, I actually have a presentation I put together that I would like to walk through. I've got hard copies. I'm just going to pass down the dais real quick. And I think staff's pulling it up. So just walking.
I just have a point of information real quick before you start.
Sure.
Just because I'm confused at all of this now. Is this not as a direct response, the information we're receiving now, based upon the vote that we made last year that was amended at the last minute with the boundary change? So am I missing something? Is there like anything new information-wise that's being presented? It's basically the same Plan 6 minus the amendment that we voted on last year, correct?
Yes, that is true. Mostly correct.
Is I'm curious to know the difference, because that was my understanding.
Sure.
And so I feel like we're getting bombarded with additional information when basically what happened was we decided on a plan and then it was amended by Mr. Deutsch and Ms. Ralston was okay with it. And that's why we're back here again, was from the amended decision, correct?
In the scope of these 3 schools, you're exactly correct.
Okay, just checking. I just wanted to know because we're getting like presentations and I thought it was pretty much the
Okay,
same
your point of information has been answered. Mr. Deutsch has the floor. No
All right,
worries.
sorry, I just wanted to take some time to just kind of organize my thoughts, and I figured trying to visualize things might be helpful. So just walking through data sources, this is an interesting boundary in regards that we've actually dealt with boundaries for this area for 3 years in a row now. So we actually have 3 sets of data to look at. And then in particular, in regards to Wilson, 2015, we dealt with Wilson in terms of what kind of school we were going to build. 2016, we established the first Wilson boundaries. 2017, which was last year, we looked at revisiting those boundaries. 2018, now this year, we're looking at essentially making the same change that was proposed in 17. So in a lot of respects, Wilson is now one of the most discussed schools in the district when it comes to boundaries, when it comes to plans. I had some parents I was meeting with last year on this who were told me, you know, Willie, we love talking to you, but we hope this isn't an annual occurrence. And ran into them at the public hearing, and they're like, happy anniversary, Willie, here we go again. But the numbers are interesting once you dig into them, because we have 3 different sets of numbers. This is a graphical set of the projections for this exact same boundary area for 3 years in a row. So I just copied what we have there, broke it down to balance out over years. You will notice, of course, 2016, we started with the school capacity at 924. We moved to the program capacity before 2017, 2018, so that changes. And then we have different years because of how far out we do our projections in terms of the data. But this is where it gets interesting. So here's all of that data graphed. The blue line here is the 2016 data. And these are the projections from 2016. The red line is the 2017 data. It suddenly drops fairly drastically. And then 2018, suddenly the projections move back up. And this is a school that has a very high change in terms of projections from year to year, and something to keep in mind. This gets interesting when we layer this on top of the actuals, and we talk about planning. So this year's projections and actuals. In May of 2017, we were projecting 707 students to go to Wilson. By the time September hit, we had an actual of 782. By December now, we have 819. It's a very high fluctuation level here. And that's just in the span of seven months there. And even just trying to start for planning out the year becomes very challenging. The next year puts all of that data together. So we've got the school capacity, the program capacity, it's the top two lines. Then you've got your 3 years worth of data, and then just the 2017 actuals to just see where we are. And this gets to the point that was made earlier in citizen comment time, where when it comes to the 2017 actuals, we are currently higher than the outlying projections for both 2017 and 2018. So there is a significant increase in the number of students that we already have, above what we've been expecting. So when we hear suddenly I think a 74% capacity number, there is a high level of skepticism from the people on the ground who are seeing the day-to-day work. In talking to the principal just to figure out what the situation is on the ground, she said we've got 2 empty classrooms, and we already have average class sizes of 25 to 27 students at the minimum. So where's the room to add all the students? Flipping to the next slide. We built Wilson and we built the boundaries knowing it was going to grow and fill up over time. And that's why I think there's consistent pushback in terms of tinkering with it every single year right after it was established. So we established waivers. We actually established broader waivers for Wilson than normal, where we allowed both military families to stay at their base schools, as well as the traditional fifth graders on to stay at base schools, or rising fifth graders to stay at their base schools. What this means is that over time, there's a whole bunch of kids that weren't there the first year, they're gonna start filling up. And we knew that walking in. This is also an area with a large amount of additional development coming in. And we knew that at the time coming in. And so yes, we created the boundaries with some capacity, but we expected it to fill. And that was the plan when we set those boundaries. Now here's the data for 2017, 2018 of this exact same area. Because we're dealing with the same area to add to Wilson 2 years in a row, we also have this differential. So while Wilson's gaining students from one year to the next, somehow that same piece of area is losing a significant number of students. How does that work? That would be interesting. But there's a differential there that's worth examining. This is where it gets really fun. So here's the chart from a couple slides back. But if you look at this yellow line, the yellow line is the actuals this year, and then you add either the 17 projections for the upcoming area to add, or you add the 18 projections. Both of those lines put you next year above the original school capacity, very close to the program capacity. And if you look at every line below it, we're expecting growth. So we're leaving very little room for growth left if we were to add the number of students we're adding on top. And this addition is very concerning. The other concern here is the boundaries overall. So when we look at schools, we're looking for some degree of compactness to create neighborhood schools. Wilson ranks among the least compact school boundaries in the entire school division at the elementary level. I looked through all the boundaries. There's a couple that are have some significant issues, but Wilson is definitely one of the least. And if you look at the blue area being added, it only adds to the lack of compactness and takes away from really the community aspect of these schools. As I look at it, Wilson changes from a fidget spinner to a dog that's looking towards 234. You can see the cute little ears and the nose, you got the 2 legs. But overall, we're increasing the lack of compactness in these boundaries. And to go along with the compactness situation, I took a point towards the eastern end of these boundaries. They're about 1.5 miles from the ABSCO to be expected. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other schools that are closer distance-wise than Wilson. And which begs the question of why we're only looking at these 3 schools. We look to the next slide, and this is also concerning. Whenever we do boundaries, if we have more than 100 students, we're supposed to have a boundary committee. So we had a boundary committee last year for a very large amount of schools that we were looking at boundarying. We had a vote, we created boundaries. Now we're looking at changing over 100 students. We should be creating a boundary committee to actually take into consideration of the local students, the local schools that are being impacted, and actually see, are there other schools that make sense to address if this is a situation that we significantly need to address. So we should be concerned about following the policies as well. A couple of proposals. I think we still need to allow Wilson Elementary the time to fill naturally as originally intended. We know there's going to be growth. We need to allow that to happen, or we're going to be back to the drawing board within 3 years of, oh, Wilson's way over capacity. How did that happen? Well, we know exactly how it happened because we built a school, and then we didn't allow our original plan to come to fruition. We also have taken into consideration where projections have been more unpredictable when drawing boundaries. So while projections may generally be very accurate, in this case, there seems to be a large disparity in projections from one year to the next, and we need to take that into consideration. We also should work on respecting the importance of neighborhood schools and draw compact boundaries. And of course, that gets balanced with the boundary committees, but we should also be following our policies here, and a change of this size, as our policies indicate, should be done through a boundary committee. Granted, this has been a very fast process, and it's a busy time of year, so I just wanted to share a couple of concerns from local parents. So one parent contacted me and stated, Willie, I want to express my concern for the proposed boundary lines, which would add more students to Wilson Elementary. The new boundaries and increased student population that comes with the proposal does not take into effect the planned expansion and new housing developments within the current boundaries and will put Kyle Wilson over capacity within 2 to 3 years. Already some classes are over capacity. For my boys, both in 3rd grade, their classes don't have enough room in the seating areas, carpet, leaving some kids to sit on the concrete. Parking lot is already overfilled, leaving no spaces to park on many days because the parking lot is already too small. Adding more students at this time isn't the right thing to do. Thank you for listening. So just a few thoughts I wanted to share there just to add a little more color to the situation.
I'm going to go first, Ms. Williams, then you. A few things here. I just want to make a few points on kind of how we got here, and I just verified my own mistake through the parliamentarian. When this motion came up last year, I attempted to divide the motion because it was 3 things in one motion that basically weren't related to each other. They could have each been passed by themselves or not passed by themselves, and mistakenly thought that to divide that motion, to vote on them separately, needed a second, which it did not get, and therefore it failed, and we voted on all 3 of them together. 2 of those minor adjustments I was in favor of, 1 I was not, but I voted for the whole thing together, which in hindsight was a mistake, because obviously for a few different reasons here, and I appreciate Mr. Deutsch wanted to put together a lot of information there. Much of the conclusions you draw from the data, not obviously having time to research that data because it wasn't presented to the board in any time that we could review. It was the conclusions from that data are certainly questionable, from my opinion. Not that your intentions are poor, but I certainly may not draw the same conclusions. As far as compactness goes, I've had kids in schools for a long time. I've never had one conversation with a neighbor about compactness of school boundaries. My daughter goes to Glenkirk Elementary School, and as far as community goes, I can tell you that that's on a neighborhood by neighborhood level, not necessarily if the adjoining neighborhood that our roads don't even connect to have the same feel to it. It's all about compactness and neighborhood feels on the neighborhood level, not the school level, which is addressed here in the red, I believe, is addressed in the red where one neighborhood is split because it's gone. So they don't have that uniformity in being able to, literally somewhere on that street, someone goes to one school and someone goes to a different one, which is, highly unusual for an elementary school. As far as the data goes, I guess the simplest way that I can look at it and say that Wilson may be overcrowded, again, kind of giving you your numbers for the sake of what I'm saying here. And what I'm saying is giving you your numbers for this discussion right now is that, okay, it's going to be overcrowded, but we have to kind of share that around the community. We have to share until we can fix it, until we can snap our fingers and get rid of all overcrowding and get a teacher in every classroom and get it down to recommended numbers and get rid of our class sizes. We have to share it. We have to share in the pain, so to speak, for lack of a better word. And obviously, with these schools so close to each other, yes, it may add a trailer or a little more crowding to Wilson, but it also relieves. It's an equation, and it relieves it on the other side, in the Neabsco side, which is very important that we do. It may not ultimately relieve trailers or reduce trailers in the long run for those two schools, all other things being equal, but it does kind of help share the pain a little bit in that. And then going back to, again, some of the conclusions that I think you draw here is you keep saying, what was allowing Wilson to naturally fill to some of these natural things that you talk about, that natural side was based on the plans that were approved, not the adjustments that we made. And so those natural fillings were planned that way, not with the ad hoc kind of adjustments that we made a year ago to this. I do think that the board made a mistake in approving some of these. I knew there were some small adjustments that were also approved along the way. I'm not saying every vote was a mistake, but for us to add an addition to an elementary school and in the same year add trailers is not right. And if we have the opportunity to make that mistake, I think we as a body should collectively entertain that. Now, what Mr. Wilkes said, I think, is honest and sincere. If he needs more time or someone, again, I would highly encourage that you work with the superintendent staff on timing. That I'm not obviously the person to go to on that, but this obviously can't wait too long. This can't wait too long, and so. Whether we pass it or don't pass it, the administration needs to know which way we're going with this, one way or the other. I think, obviously, by the tone and what I'm saying, that I'm more than likely going to vote yes for these boundaries. But we need to understand that this is shared. We have to. This is one pool of money that all of this is coming from, and that we have to kind of share in the pain and the successes of opening a new school or making sure that all the overcrowding isn't put onto one nearby neighborhood that way. So I think I made my point, and I'll go back to Ms. Williams. It's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to reiterate again that we're here because we made a bad decision, and just as the chairman said, all of our schools have to share the burden of overcrowding. And one of the advantages that your district has, Mr. Deutsch, that my district does not at this time, and a few other districts, is you have room to grow. You said it yourself. You wanted the school to fill naturally, but you also have land and space. There are elementary schools planned in the CIP for your area. The expense of having elementary school children at Neabsco be so severely overcrowded when we can absolutely provide them with a better quality of education is much more important in the short term, because the long term, you already have built-in relief for people who aren't even there yet. So I find it
to me, it's a little offensive, but that's because my district is so overcrowded that it's ridiculous. And even with what we did, we still have overcrowding in my district, period. Kilby redo did not solve all of my overcrowding issues. This is a proposal, speaking from someone who's actually on the joint board committee to get rid of trailers, that does just that for all 3 of these schools. I mean, I'm sorry, for Neabsco, correct, that had to get trailers after we just added an addition. So to me, it's ridiculous that we would even entertain when we have an opportunity to not only get rid of trailers, but provide a better quality of education for all students involved, that we would not think that this is a good idea to go on. And as far as more time and citizen comments and things like that, this is the exact same plan that was presented before. So if someone missed it, absolutely they should have time to review it. But this is not new information. And I appreciate all of the time and effort that you put into this proposal. But to me, the bottom line, it really feels like your district doesn't want those kids, because I can't think of any other reason why this would not be a good idea. It is something that we all face here. We all know that overcrowding is a big problem. That's why we have the joint committee. And to tell children that they can't or they don't deserve to just be a little bit less overcrowded when we have an opportunity to do that for them is wrong to me. And that's exactly what we did before. And here's an opportunity for us to stand up and make a better decision. And that's what we should do. I mean, Wilson, the Coles district, you have room to grow. It's in our CIP. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, because I'm always happy to receive correction. I have no issue with that. But in this circumstance, I can't think of a better way to go at this time for the short term, knowing that we have long-term solutions in place. So I would love to find out why we should not do this based upon those rationales or any other rationale other than I really can't understand why we can't fit these kids in Wilson. So I'm a little confused.
We'll go Miss Jessie, then Mr. Trenum. Sorry, she got me first, Mr. Trenum.
Could you return to slide 7? Yes, slide 7 on the screen. Yeah, slide 7, where all your trailers are. I think it's on slide 7.
You want it on the other presentation? You want it on the staff presentation?
On the staff presentation, yeah, on yours. I'm sorry, I thought you understood that.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
Should be a moment, I guess.
Okay. So apparently, you know, I've been talking about this forever. I missed the trailer park when I started talking because I didn't talk about Neabsco, because I had no idea that here too, and this is not, when we talk about trailers, they say, oh, trailers, but I have kids in trailers. We're really talking about overcrowding. The only reason you have trailers is that you have overcrowding. And in this wealthy district, here's another trailer court, which it looks like to me, with an outside facility for kids. You got a bathroom outside. It's an elementary school. We have an infrastructure committee who's concerned about safety. They're concerned about locks. And yet we've got 12 trailers with kids outside with absolutely no safety precautions. And people, we don't live in the same world we used to live in. We just don't. And anything I think we can do to get these babies inside, we need to do. Now, I think my thing was whatever, it was Ms. Ralston's school. And as far as I was concerned, it was her district. And if she was happy, then I was going to be happy. So I'm glad to see it come back, because I wasn't happy with the decision before. And when I look at, I think it's slide, hold on. A question as I'm finding the slide, is this program capacity or what type of capacity are we looking at?
Yes, we're looking at program capacity.
If we looked at actual capacity, it would be different.
I'm sorry?
If we looked at actual capacity versus program, there would be different numbers. But I do want to look at slide, what is the slide? Slide 13. When I look at, because I went through this today, when I look at NEAPSCO and Plan 6, I know that you're concerned about the capacity of the school, but in slide 6, NEAPSCO in 2018-19 is going to be at 97% capacity, am I correct?
Correct.
And then the next year, you're going to be at 98. Even if, and this is after we've taken kids out, am I correct?
That's correct.
And then the following year, by 2024-25, they're going to be at 103 capacity. They are going to have 75% free and reduced. The other schools are going to have 45 and 35. And I'm going to tell you, I've worked in Title I schools, and the percentage of free and reduced in your school really does make a difference. When those schools receive more students, of course, under site-based, your budget is based on students. So I don't know, I'm trying to understand why Montclair felt that they were going to lose their assistant principal in all of this, but as you get more kids, you do receive a great deal more money. The question, I just find it incredible that we would consider leaving 12 trailers in a school, and I know that, and I don't mean this to be sarcastic, when they're talking about carpet versus concrete, we're talking about outside facilities versus 12 trailers. It makes no sense to me at all. And when I also look at the question of military options, and I have a question on that. When those parents chose the military option and stayed at those schools, can those same parents now, have you anticipated whether or not those parents will be coming back? Is there a timeline on that military option?
So our forecast model is highly sensitive to the student transfer rate. These rates were greatly affected when the boundaries were set for Wilson because in an unprecedented way with that military family-connected transfer provision. And in large part, that is the main contributor to the projections varying from those that were done in 2015 versus those that were done in 2016. This 2017 school year is actually the first year where we have a base or a new benchmark, and there's no additional provisions, there's no rising fifth graders, there's no military waiver for those families. Therefore, we anticipate our most recent forecasts to be the best representation of how Wilson is going to continue to grow.
And finally, I applaud Mr. Dodge for doing all the work that he's done, but I have been a principal, and sometimes you guys are wrong.
We're usually wrong on that.
I know, because as a principal, you're riding in your car, and all of a sudden you see a development coming, and so I would get on the phone and say, "Where are these kids going? Are they in my projections?" But most of the time you were really accurate. But I think that, I do think that there are times when the projections are off, but I know the involved comprehensive work that goes into this boundary calculation, and I don't question Mr. I guess I do question whether or not we as laymen can say that you're totally off. But when you look at the slide that has the, I think that's slide 12. Look at NEAPSCO. They're already over the line. Then look at Montclair in 2025. And yes, you are up at Wilson. But my question is, where would all of these kids in trailers go? And so the question is, I know you don't have all the stats, but why not Dale City? Why not Minnieville? Why not? And I'm sure you have answers for that. I'm sure you thought of that. So could you share with us his question of why not these other schools?
So on Mr. Deutsch's 12th slide, there was a list of schools that...
And could you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry,
I'm a senior.
For about 4 days.
Thank you.
If you need it, Mr. Iman can raise the podium for you. It's like he is like amazing at that podium. It's like his thing. Can you get you like a little remote? He'll take care of you. Honestly, if the sound in the back, it is a little hard sometimes. If you could amp up the podium mic a little bit, I think it would be helpful.
On Mr. Deutsch's 12th slide, there was a list of schools that had the varying distances. The issue with reassigning some of these children in the APSCO to Bel Air is you would likely be sending the very same children that you reassigned from there to Neabsco this year, and that's those along Barksdale. Bel Air does have 49 seats available, but that's because that's the work that the board did just last year. You brought that school under capacity. It was formerly over capacity. Henderson is closer, yet it's at 100.6% this year. Minnieville is at 113.8%. Dale City is at 128.6%. Montclair does have seats. It has 146 seats available. Fitzgerald is farther away, and it's at 104.4%, and Carrydale is slightly farther away, and it's at 136%. So in essence, there's not a great list of alternatives for these children. The space that's available and the space that is most proximate to these neighborhoods is Wilson and Montclair.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Mr. Trenum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of observations. Number one, I've done this a number of times already. So this is always painful, dealing with boundaries. But and these just random observations. But number one is with the number of students that we're moving, by our regulations, we should be doing a committee. Now, that said, there are regulations, and we can choose not to follow them, but we need to be very transparent and open about that when we do that. There may be good reasons for not following the regulations. We just need to acknowledge that. As far as the 2024 numbers and 2025 numbers, Ms. Lilly, I'll double down on that, and I'll tell you one thing I know about the 10-year numbers is they're wrong. I don't know whether they're high or low, but they're wrong, and that's just based on the nature of the thing. Don't take it personal, Dave. But because things change over time. Policies change. The economy changes over 10 years. There's a lot of changes that we just can't anticipate. So they're our best guess. The 10-year numbers are just, to me, it's like, are things getting bigger and worse? Are they getting smaller and better? Or do we think they're going to stay somewhere the same? Other than that, it's just a marker like that. So as far as the 10-year numbers. That said, 12, I can appreciate the pain of 12 trailers at Neabsco. Back when I first got on this board, we had, I think, 13 at Glenkirk, 9 at Bristow Run, 9 at Cedar Point, 11 at Buckland Mills, 5 at what was in the old Noakesville Elementary School. I don't know, some number of Victory. It took us a while before the plan executed, but we pulled 40 trailers out of the Linton Hall corridor in 1 year. But it took opening 2 schools to do that and some time. So I can certainly appreciate the pain. It's not good, and while I can understand the growth, as we will grow into Wilson some, we also can't afford, it's not good policy to let space go unutilized when we have a small school like NAAPSCO with that many trailers. I mean, for another reason, if you think about the weather outside right now, these kids are walking out to the trailers, out to the classes, and it's cold outside. So I definitely think we need to address that. A couple of things I do think we need to follow up on as far as what are the attendance numbers today? I think that we need to get that figure for all 3 of those schools. As far as the transfer issues, we may not know them now, but we can find out how many kids are actually going to a school outside where they're boundary from. I think that would be good information for us to have. I think, and I don't know the area there, so there may be some way of balancing a little bit more between Wilson and Montclair, depending on what the impact may be. But I think that goes to Mr. Wilkes' concern, is I think he does need a little more time to evaluate that, and I would support him on that. I think that is appropriate. So there's still a lot of information out there, I think, but I think it is incumbent upon us to use our facilities as best as possible while it takes time for the plans to execute through and come to fruition. I think this is one of those things that we can solve, and we should solve it, at least to the best of our ability. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trenum. Anyone else? Mr. Deutsch, one more time. How about it?
Thank you. All right, so wanted to go over a couple of things that were raised. I wish we could dial the rhetoric down, but it is disappointing when it gets personal fast with words like offensive, ridiculous, and the insinuation of people not wanting kids. But so just running down a couple of things. This, at the time it was built, was the last school in that area for the CIP. Is there another school in the CIP for Coles District? Yes, it's on the far end. Coles District is a lot longer than most eastern ones, so that school is 12 miles away, roughly. Just as a point of reference, Belmont Bay in the far northeast corner is 9.5 miles away. So it's nowhere close in the vicinity. We talk about how we got here. I am just making the point that there's nothing close in that area. That point was raised. In terms there were a lot of plans created through boundary committees, and that was useful. And there were different iterations of those as we got up to 6 different plans. But at the time, the plan that we passed, because a large number of parents spoke out and the community was very vocal about it, we had one school that started out at 154% capacity that we moved down to only 128% capacity, and was the highest percentage capacity one on the map. Now, keep in mind, the NAAPSCO we're talking about here is 120% capacity. And that school was Aquan Elementary. They were vocal. They got what they wanted. But I think we should be, and also in terms of Wilson, and I think part of why people are concerned, frustrated, Wilson was pulled in very last minute into this whole process. After multiple meetings of the boundary committees had gone on, we had the least number of, we only had 1 member added at the very last minute. And so I think that adds to the concern of why are we readdressing that school every single year. I think there are potential opportunities if we were to actually form a boundary committee and look at things more holistically to create compact boundaries that address the numbers more accurately. But we shouldn't be rushing these things through so quickly.
Mr. Khan, do you have something? I'm sorry. I was trying to read facial expressions, and I didn't know if that was acknowledge me or not, or I want a pillow. I wasn't sure which one you were going with.
A couple of the items that have been mentioned just briefly here. The first one is we had the discussion about essentially the continuation of the committee or the process for forming a boundary committee. We felt that this was a very different set of circumstances, and essentially because if we were making any significant changes to the recommendation, then I think it would be worthwhile to say, okay, you're reinventing the wheel, you're starting over, you're doing a boundary committee and doing it. Instead, this is taking essentially the exact same work from the boundary committee, coming forward with that recommendation, and really saying we'd like to reconsider the same presentation. That's sort of the distinction between, I mean, I would agree if we were saying, no, it's 50% different than it was before, or probably even if it was, pick a percentage or something, if it was substantially different, that would be a whole different story. But, and probably a part of us in the sense of last year, I kind of have a concern that the magnitude of, we wanted to make changes, we wanted to provide space on the eastern end, we wanted to address a lot of our elementary capacity, but certainly an issue with that is, to some extent, I think the whole process almost became too overwhelming in the sense of the number and number of schools, the number of changes that were being put in there, and as a result, we ended up with a situation at NIABSCO where we put an addition on, we had 5 trailers, and then when we were done with the process, we had to come and add 7 trailers. That begs for a resolution somehow, and we really felt that we needed to come back and make, if you will, a reconsideration, and it's based on the same presentation from before. The second component really is relative to timing. We've generally had the concern from the board before that, okay, traditionally, yes, we do boundaries. Basically, we start them in the period November to December. We try to get them done in January for a couple of reasons. The primary one is, historically, the board has said, we don't want to be doing boundaries and budget at the same time. It creates somewhat confusion at times on what's going on. You can have some very complicated meetings of essentially significant major decisions before the board and trying to address more than one topic, I won't say one at the same time, because there are always other things going on, but to try and divide up when those major decisions are made and spread them out across the year. The other piece that we try and time into that is, there is the question, traditionally for an elementary school, we look to make the decisions in January, and again, once a decision is made by the end of January, that's providing information to the parents about what decisions have been made, and you can move forward. The longer that decision is made, then those parents that are out there that have to adapt to it, the less time they actually get to actually address the fact that what the changes are made. And the final piece, in a sense, is we also have done this with the idea that to the extent that the board makes a change, and even in the boundary changes last year, we like to see if we can't make those changes and get them into the proposed budget so that we're not going halfway through the budget process, and in this case having 3 schools that say, well, we proposed a budget based on the old boundaries. Halfway through the budget process, we're going to stop, change significant numbers of students, types of students, et cetera, and then try and readjust the budgets in the middle of the process. That becomes more difficult. We'd really like to get, in a sense, a resolution sort of one way or another before we hit the budget so that the proposed budget can include those changes in it. Good, bad, or indifferent, they have them, we get them into the budget process at the front end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Satterwhite. I didn't see. I apologize. Ms. Satterwhite.
Thank you. I'll be quick in the interest of time and the fact that it's snowing. I agree with a lot of the comments that Mr. Trenum made, a lot of his observations. I don't think it's so much of an issue for any of us as we need to get kids out of those trailers. And I know I had complaints that I saw online today about kids at Battlefield who were cold in the trailers. I get that. I think it's more of a matter of how do we move them. Now, I appreciate Dr. Cartledge, the comments about the schools, and because that was one of the questions I had too, is like, why weren't we looking at the other schools? So thank you for answering Ms. Jessie's question about that, because that definitely did answer a lot. As Mr. Trenum mentioned, as Mr. Deutsch has brought out, I would like to see some more numbers. If you would consider re-looking at the numbers of the actuals for Wilson and the actuals for the other schools so that we can look at where we are with that. Do we have neighborhoods that are going to be opening up for development in the next year or two in the Wilson area that we need to be concerned about? Because my biggest concern with this is I don't want to see us going through this again in a year or two because we have filled up Wilson and we've got some problems. That's my concern. It's like, where do we find the right mix to make sure that we have our students taken care of and that we have them in the right place and we don't have to have these annual meetings, as Mr. Deutsch pointed out. So that's the concern. And, you know, shuffling the kids, we've been through it in the Linton Hall area, in the Gainesville area. Shuffling kids every year is not very fair to parents. I do appreciate the comments Mr. Klein made about timeliness. Parents with childcare issues, they do have to line those up if they're changing schools, and I know that is something that can take considerable time with waiting lists. So I understand why this needs to be done quickly, but still, first meeting in February, we're just being introduced to budget. I think if we were to push back then, we aren't going to have as many people asking us questions about budget. I don't think that would be too far out of the realm if we didn't vote until that night. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you very much. All right, we have already accomplished item 17.01, so that takes us to 18.01, superintendent's time. Dr. Waltz.
Thank you, Chairman Sawyers, members of the board. Lots of big news tonight. First, on behalf of the administrative leadership and all of our employees, I offer congratulations to Mrs. Lily Jesse on her appointment as the vice chairman, actually reappointment as the vice chairman of the school board. Secondly, January 4th, Thursday, 2018, will be a code red. It is snowing, with more expected. So while you're at home, you can register for the spring session of our online high school program, Virtual High School at PWCS. This opportunity offers flexibility, low teacher-student ratio, and an alternative to traditional classroom instruction. Again, that registration opens tomorrow. Students can earn full credit in a semester-length course, working with highly qualified instructors. Registration information is available on the Virtual High School section of the PWCS website. Congratulations to the 29 teachers and 2 principals who have been nominated for Teacher and Principal of the Year awards. Please see our website announcement for their names and schools. They will be honored at a school board reception on Tuesday, January 30th at Colgan High School. A final reminder for parents and guardians that the annual Parent Summit will be held on Saturday, January 6th from 8 to 11:30 a.m. at Hilton High School. The summit event was called the best ever by those who participated last year. It's an opportunity for parents of high school students to learn about graduation requirements, scholarships, financial aid, college admission, and more. Go to your high school webpage or to the College and Career Planning webpage in order to register. Also on January 6th, don't miss the performance of the all-county high school bands. It takes place at 2 p.m. at Osborne Park High School. Earlier this evening, Dr. Matthew Cartledge gave a presentation on a proposed boundary adjustment that will affect attendance areas for Montclair, Neabsco, and Wilson. A reminder that the school board will hold a public hearing on that topic Wednesday, January 17th. The hearing will be at 7 p.m. in this room, just prior to the school board's regular public meeting. In closing, welcome everyone back. I hope you enjoyed your holiday, and best wishes for 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Before we get into board matters, and it is snowing, had a brief conversation. I need the board's attention slightly outside of the norm here. I'm going to make a motion for unanimous consent, but I'm going to explain it. Basically, I'll give the short version, and if you want the long version, I'll explain. The parliamentarian brought to my attention, we don't have time to put this into a regular motion moving forward. We can kind of adjust this and handle this later in a consent agenda item. But basically, we have work session meetings, and under contract, he is to attend all of the next work session we have coming up next week. He is to attend everything unless we waive that. He has it here for me. He wrote it up for me. And basically, we don't have anything voting on the work session, all that, but we still have to waive his attendance because that is per his contract. So he wrote this up for me, but I am going to ask if there is unanimous consent to waive the presence of the parliamentarian at the working session school board meetings. And we can make it more formal in a later motion for the ones where we actually vote and the markup and all those types of things. But this is in particular for the work session meetings. He's asking if he can have if there's unanimous consent for that. Happy to answer questions, Ms. Satterwhite, yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, is this basically a poll, then we'll confirm it next meeting?
No,
or
it's
we
not a
need to
poll. We
actually
specifically
vote on it
didn't go down the poll route. We're
Okay,
just
we have to vote on it before
We're just
the work
asking for
session.
unanimous consent today, and I'm even saying even for the work sessions that we can't basically vote on the consent agenda moving forward. We can actually handle later work sessions, but the timing didn't work out where we weren't able to, the one for next week and after that. So we don't even have to go the route of all of them. It's just a matter of waiving, through unanimous consent, waiving his presence at the ones until we can get it on the consent agenda at the next meeting. Thanks for bringing that up. That's what we're asking for. So unanimous consent to waive the presence of the parliamentarian at the working sessions upcoming until we can get it on the meeting. Any objection? Thank you. Where did I start last time, Ms. Satterwhite? You never forget. Ms. Satterwhite, which end did I start at last time? So down there this time? Mr. Deutsch.
All right. So we're all back from the holidays. I got to attend, I think right before the holidays hit, a really fun breakfast for the Hilton AP Scholars. Our student rep was actually one of them, and we got to see students from last year as well as this year being honored for some really incredible amounts of work during their AP programs there. I guess I want to address two things in broad categories. One is transparency, and the other is equity. So transparency. Tomorrow, it is important that as a board we continue to actually work together as a board and do things cohesively as a board. And that's why I was disappointed earlier with the process for the vice chair vote. We should have actually been able to nominate, come to consensus as a board. When there is reference to how things were done before, there was actually consensus derived before. And there was and that working together as a board is actually very important. But that comes back to one of the important roles of the chair and the vice chair now under Policy 131 is putting things on the agenda. Under the rules changes that were made almost a year and a half ago now, without their consent, items are not allowed on the agenda. And this is important moving forward, and hopefully we can get this addressed in the next year. But while people will claim, oh, nothing was denied, tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of what had to be a special meeting because items were not allowed on the agenda. And so it's important that we create processes that allow consensus from the board, allow voices of the board, and I hope that maybe that can change in the coming year. Two things on the equity side of the equation. I really liked the proposal from our student rep about having town halls around the district, the ones in different magisterial districts, and look forward to being at those. I think as we continue to look at the Woodbridge situation, though, we need to look at what's happening at all of our older high schools. Because the question before us is, are we going to just listen to the vocal, or will we also listen to those who are overlooked and silent for various reasons? And many of the challenges that we have at Woodbridge, we also have at some of our older schools, including OP and Stonewall. And we need to make sure that as we address things across the county that are a result of inequities from age and other situations, that we do them across the board to solve the solutions that we're identifying and addressing. And I think that's going to be important moving forward. One other issue on that front that I want to address is I think we also kind of merging both of those together is to figure out a board policy for inviting people to the boardroom. because when we selectively honor or recognize certain people, it creates inequities and jealousy. And so I want to give some shout outs to a lot of our state champions that haven't necessarily been honored here in the boardroom. Boys basketball, we had a state runner-up from Hilton. This year, the cheer team were state champions, runners-up the previous year. And these are only a few. There's probably some that I'm missing. Brentsville District, we had regional champions for boys and girls cross country. Boys swim and girls soccer, we had regional champions. Stonewall, we had a state championship in swimmer, an individual one. OP, we had a softball state runners-up in regionals, and they won the state last year, weren't invited to the school board. Potomac had a wrestling regional, a track state, a basketball regional. Patriot had a girls basketball, finished 4th in state, state champions in swim. And we need to actually make sure that we're consistent across the board on these fronts so that we can recognize all of the achievements and that we don't have parents like I had after the last meeting calling me up going, or talking to me in schools going, why hasn't our team been recognized? And so figuring out those balances and being equal across the board is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to start off a little bit differently, but I can help you out with that answer, Mr. Deutsch. You can invite your teams to the boardroom just like Ms. Jessie did. And as far as inequality and representation for sports teams, I can pretty much guarantee you freedom gets talked about the least. And that's why I sat up here and said their name a bazillion times. And as a Prince William County resident and former student, this is not a new situation. That's why we have the opportunity for board matters, and we can talk to the press, and we can do our job to make sure that our schools and districts are recognized, whether it's inside or outside the boardroom. As far as inequality, it's, that's part of the reason why we're here. So let me start where I thought I was going to start, which is first by apologizing for missing the last meeting of the school year. I had a medical family emergency that superseded pretty much everything and took an entire week of my life to just kind of exist. So I wanted to apologize to everyone. I don't take it lightly to miss board meetings, and it's just something that as a family we're going through and we will continue to go through. But I wanted to make sure that I apologize for missing and that everyone knows that I'm back in business. I did want to speak to, in saying that, I'll just say that, one of the greatest lessons I've learned over this holiday season, and I think we can all be mindful of, is that life is short. And I say that to say we spend a lot of time up here on the board discussing things that have already been discussed, and not for the public's benefit, but for whatever reason we keep rehashing things that we're supposed to be working professionals. We're supposed to come to our meetings prepared, and we should know. I mean, everyone forgets things from time to time, but there's no reason to continue to rehash something that's been presented to us time and time again. Or the boundary plan, for example, tonight. I mean, it was not only stated by myself, but even our staff. It's the exact same plan. To continue to go over this when we could be working on other important matters. And I'm not saying that it's not important, that which doesn't deserve discussion. It absolutely does. But I'm gonna say it again, life is short. So if we've already done something, we owe it to ourselves and to our public to keep it moving. We have a lot of things to work on. There's always things to do. And it's just, from my personal opinion, I just think it's completely unfair and a waste of the public's time to continue to rehash something that we've already discussed. Reminders are great, but life is short, trust me. I just wanted to mention, as Dr. Waltz did, the Parent Summit is on January 6th, which is Saturday at C.D. Hilton High School. I will be a presenter. I encourage everyone who is registered. I know that it's very cold outside. No one wants to come out in the cold weather, especially on a Saturday. I think it's going to be like 19 degrees, but it is so worth your time and effort. This will be my 4th year in attendance, my 2nd year as a presenter. I learn something new every single time. And let me tell you, if you don't come from anything else but to see people chase Mr. Bassett around and with the course catalog in several different languages, that's something to see. It was a hot ticket item last year.
But I do encourage parents, if you miss it this year, sign up for it next year. It's applicable for rising seniors and everyone who has a high school student, whether your student is in 9th grade or 12th grade. There's still valuable information to be gained. I just wanted to thank all of the organizations and community groups who helped out our schools over the holiday season. They do so all the time, but they go into overdrive during the holiday season. I know we had plenty, and in my district, I just wanted to give a special shout out to St. Paul's United Methodist, who's always there for my schools and the community. I mean, they just do such a fabulous job. They deserve all the kudos they can get. And in addition to them, AJ Keller Realty, I know they held a coat drive and continue to serve Featherstone Elementary and are always looking to help out for others. And it just touches me. And if I've missed other organizations, I'm sorry. Those are just the first two that I was able to catch up on so far on emails that I did see who participated in helping our students. And missing the last meeting, of course, I'm a Woodbridge alumni. So I appreciate all of the parents who come and speak before the board regarding Woodbridge. I understand what it's like to be a student in that school. I was there. We always have work to be done, but I do want to let you know that it'll be okay. I'm here. I made it with no windows. I don't take it lightly that there aren't any windows, and our new schools have plenty. I do understand the impact of it, but I do want to let you know that all hope is not lost. Your students can have success, and we do, as a school board and as a school division, we have something called the infrastructure committee, which we don't talk about enough and we seem to forget. But one of the jobs of the infrastructure committee is to go back and look at older schools and to see what we need to do to bring them up to speed. So you're not going unnoticed. Any older school in this school division is not being ignored. Now, I will tell you, sitting up here, this is my second term, the school system moves slower than probably any other system that you're accustomed to, especially in this area. But just because we move a little slow doesn't mean we're not thinking about it and doesn't mean we're not working on it. And I can tell you as a board member, I also appreciate when parents come because it helps, to remind other people who aren't aware of the situation. But we do have committees in place. We do look at these things, and it is a slow process. And I appreciate all the parents who are taking the time out to learn the process and understand how it works and be a part of the CIP in the budget season, because we need all the help that we can get. Nobody up here is the expert among experts on anything. We need our constituent base. That's why we're elected. We need to hear from you. Moving on from that, the governor's school has an informational meeting on the 6th. So if you're not coming to the Parent Summit and you have a student who's interested in science or math, and they're rising junior, I believe is the eligibility is 11th and 12th grade year. So if you're a sophomore, it might be something, or below that, it might be something that you want to go look at. Of course, I'm biased because I love the governor's school. I would encourage you to go check it out. You never know. You might be surprised. Your student might be surprised at how awesome it is if you haven't been. Freedom had a bistro opening on the 14th of December. Unfortunately, that was the week that I was out of pocket, and I just wanted to apologize for missing it because we all know that I love Freedom in the bistro, and I was very much looking forward to attending the event. I know that Miss Jessie went in my place, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank you and to thank everyone who helped to cover for me while I was unable to participate. And then I just want to circle back to one of our staff who I know that we all got an email, and I don't know if she was publicly recognized, but I just want to thank Ms. Goss for the extra service that you provided to one of our school families out of the kindness of your heart. We see you up here all the time, and you're always giving us information, and I know how amazing and awesome you are, but I just wanted to publicly thank you for your service to our family in need. It just takes a special kind of person, and our staff always does the job of 2 or 3 people, so to take an additional amount of time to cook an entire meal for a family is just worth the time and praise and effort. So I thank you, and I know that family thanks you, and it just shows, again, how wonderful our staff is and how amazing we are and what we do for our community. And that just touched me, so I just wanted to thank you because that's just awesome. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Oh, and Happy New Year, of course. So I hope everyone enjoyed the break. I went in a reverse order, but I hope everyone enjoyed the break. I know that we don't have school tomorrow, as I was flashing Kate down there because she's looking a little sleepy. And I know that my son is very excited we don't have school tomorrow, but I hope everyone reads something while they're out for the day. So thank everyone. I know Kate's like, no, I'm done. But I can't help it. I love reading. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
I'm going to balance that out.
Totally unrelated. Lori, don't take this the wrong way. Going to remind everybody we have 6 more of these to get through. It's 10:50 and it's snowing. So just take that for what it's worth. And no offense, Ms. Williams.
I'm going to balance this out. I'm going to pass and move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. You're my new best friend, Ms. Ralston. Mr. Wilk, while you're sitting there, can you go start my car? It's like got snow all over it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wait a minute. I want to, say congratulations to a few teachers in my district that have been named for, up for the state, from King and 2 from Minnieville. Kelly Wheeler is Minnieville. Star Granby is Minnieville. And Jennifer Ditto, how do you pronounce her last name? Ditto Mato. D'Amato. Okay. Well, she's going to change it because she's going to be mad at me. I also would like to acknowledge and thank Potomac High School teacher Shonda Harris Muhammad for inviting me to attend the Women's Education Leadership in Virginia. Prince William chapter meet and greet was in December. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, we have a lot of little bitty prints. We also want to thank Otif Carney, who was one of the best teachers around as far as I'm concerned, because one, he was in the APSCO, and he was at Bevel, and now he is Secretary of Education. That says a lot. That really says a lot. We're going to miss him at Bevel. If you were a student, you thought you could not make it, just go sit down with him, because he was always there. So we look forward to great things from him this coming year and for the next 4 years if he chooses to stay that long. So that's about it. Since it's snowing, you said nothing, so I'm going to make mine short. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. Mr. Trenum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year, everybody. I trust you had a nice holiday season and excited to be back to school. First off, I want to thank the superintendent for canceling school tomorrow. I know Friday is supposed to be bitter cold as well. We'll see how that works out. But I do want to just remind all the parents out there, if you think the situation is such that is unsafe for your child, either wait at the bus or what have you, or walk to school, you have every right to keep them home. It will be an excused absence. That is your decision, and so I would encourage you to use your discretion. A couple things. I do want to thank the Webelos from PAC 858 from Chris Young and Victory Elementary School. It's great to see y'all. Thank you for coming out and leading us in the pledge this evening. I think next board meeting we have the Scouts from Cedar Point. I look forward to that as well. And finally, on Monday evening is, and this isn't a Brentsville district thing, but I thought I'd put this out. On Monday evening, it's the college football national championships. Many of you will be watching that. Regardless of whether you're rooting for Alabama or Georgia, I would encourage you to root for the starting defensive end for Alabama. It's Deshaun Hand, who's a Woodbridge graduate.
Yes.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trenum. Ms. Satterwhite.
All right, that decides who I'm cheering for then. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year. Couple of quick things. Right before our winter break, I attended the Battlefield High School Choir Winter Concert, and I heard a part of I heard a performance from the Mozart's Requiem Mass in D minor that they will be performing on Saturday, January 13th at 7 p.m. at the Hilton Performing Arts Center. They are combining Battlefield High School and Fairfax High School's combined choirs and orchestras will be presenting. Tickets are now on sale through the Hilton Performing Arts Center. There were hundreds of students on stage for Battlefield High School with the choirs and orchestra. It was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever heard, and I can just imagine combining with Fairfax High School, it's going to be a concert you don't want to miss. They sounded professional, and so I invite everybody to check into tickets for that. As Mr. Deutsch pointed out, 1 year ago tomorrow is the anniversary of our school board special meeting, and I just want to point out that the minutes from that meeting were improperly voted to be removed at the January 18th meeting, and they were never properly replaced. Under Virginia FOIA laws, we are not allowed to delete or remove minutes from legally held meetings, and I'd just like to request that this board correct that and take action so that we're in compliance with state law, and ask that that correction please be added to the agenda at the next meeting. So I'd ask that that please happen. Let's see, I forgot the date for it, I didn't write it down. January 28th, I believe, is the 4th annual Haymaker STEM Expo at Battlefield High School. This is student run, and it is a huge event in Haymarket and for surrounding communities. All of our feeder schools are participating. I encourage you to put that on your calendar. I also want to thank Mr. Ferreira, Mr. Rodemel, and Mr. Zook from Battlefield High School for their efforts as we began this school year. They have been rolling with things as they've happened. They've done a wonderful job. And today we had a burst pipe. Our parents and students also rolled with that today, and I'm sure that everybody at Battlefield is very happy that we have a day off tomorrow. So thank you, Dr. Waltz, for our snow day.
Thank you, Ms. Satterwhite. Ms. Jessie.
I just, by the way, I went to a basketball game for Woodbridge High School, and the girls are great. I may be back in the boardroom with the girls. When we get to board matters, I began to see a pattern of things that you could say to people in private, that could be addressed in private, that does not need to be publicly addressed. You know, and no, I didn't take it personally when people didn't vote for me to be the vice chair, but I don't know, I'm beginning to take it a little personal. So I'm going to ask that if you have something you would like to be addressed, like if you didn't like the fact that those Woodbridge High School football boys were in this room, then you could talk to me at the end, and Dr. Waltz and I could sit down and say, okay, what are we going to do for, you know, Lily felt the need to bring these kids in. I did, because I got to know those kids. I got to talk to those kids. And I'm not going to let anybody rain on their parade by saying just because Mrs. Jessie invited you in here to celebrate, that now we need to recognize every person. If you want your people brought in, bring them in. When I was a principal, that's who I was. And Dr. Waltz knows it. That's who I am. I celebrate kids, I celebrate adults, and if you come to my house, you will see that that's who I am. Mr. Trenum is a budget person. That's who he is. Allison, I don't know, she writes down everything. I don't know if she keeps these notes, but all of us have different personalities, and I will not be intimidated to not celebrate kids, because that's why I'm on this board. And the other thing, for parents who come into this boardroom, the Woodbridge parents, any parent that come into this boardroom should have the freedom to speak and not have us say, well, just because you came to the boardroom, in other words, don't bother to come to the boardroom because we have plans of what we're going to do, and we don't want to hear your voice. That's not what we're supposed to do. To the young people here, when you see us disagree and when those parents come into this boardroom, it's democracy at its best. Everyone should feel free to come into this boardroom, and we're not supposed to talk about them during citizens' time. I didn't like what happened the last time. We brought up Woodbridge High. We're making them into the bad people because they're tired of being from 1975. And so at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here while people take away something that was a good thing. Each one of us can celebrate, or if we want to come up with a policy of how we celebrate athletes, let's do that. But let's talk about it behind closed doors and say, you know what, I'd like to do that. You know, is there something that we can all agree to? As a board, we can do that. But don't beat up on me in public. I won't allow it. Thank you.
I think those were good points, Ms. Jessie. I just have a few thoughts about them, and quite honestly, we can talk about them at another time. So with no further business before this board, this meeting is adjourned.